What it do, bitches? How's my volume level? Where's my snare? I have no snare on my headphones. I was just watching that Chappelle Show skit yesterday. Fisticuffs. He can't hear. He's like, where's my snare? No, I'm serious. Where's my snare? I can't hear. Turn it up. I can't hear on my left headphone. Chappelle Show's probably the greatest thing ever. 69 viewers. That's a nice number. Okay. This went live quicker than usual. Usually there's like a countdown. There wasn't a countdown this time. I just went to the eye doctor and I can now see for the first time in like a year. It is fucking amazing how my eyesight got like gradually worse and I didn't realize it. It was it just like creeped up on me. And then so I go to the eye doctor today and dude gives me I get some more contacts, but dude gives me a pair to wear out to like take. And holy shit. It was like the first time I'd seen in like a year. I didn't realize how horrible my eyes are. And everybody knows I play golf. And it got to the point where like I would hit a golf shot, I'd hit a drive, and I'd have to be like, where'd that ball go? I have no idea where that went. Like I could see the ball take off, but then I couldn't see it land. And I'd always have to ask people like, where'd that end up? It got to the point where I could sit in my bed and I would look at the time on the TV, like the little time thing, and it would be blurry. And I would have to like squint. Somebody says, hey, Kyle, you got me into Kratom. I'm taking the green strain now. What kind do you use? All strains. I'll use red. I'll use green. Just depends on my mood. Green is more of an uppy strain. Red is more of a downer, relaxing strain. My go-to is probably Thai Red Vein. But I like all the strains. And by the way, guys, hold off for just a little bit on the super chats. I'm going to get to your super chats later. But first, I want to talk about some stuff before we get to the super chats. Okay, so I made a little list. For you ass. Okay, so the first thing is I actually have to tweet a poll for this. I'm gonna do a Twitter poll here. Now, I have mixed feelings on political labels. On the one hand, I feel like there's an over-reliance on labels, and when people only talk about labels, it annoys the shit out of me. I feel like Dave Rubin is a big offender on this front. Like, he loves to just throw around labels and act like that makes him an intellectual. Like, I'm a classical liberal, and this is... And, you know, they'll pontificate on just labels for an hour, and it's like, okay, are you going to get to a point at any point? So on the one hand, I think there's this over-reliance on labels. But then on the other hand, they're necessary. They're necessary because when somebody when you're trying to sum up where somebody falls on the political spectrum, I hate to burst everybody's bubble, but you all do fit into some sort of a box. Now, there are minor deviations here and there, but there is a political ideology that most accurately describes, or a political label that most accurately describes where you fall on the spectrum. Now, if you listen to my show, you know for a long time, I've thrown around a few different labels that I'm relatively comfortable with and I think are accurate when describing my beliefs, but they all have their downfalls. So I got to try to figure out how to word this. Basically, I want to ask, what do you like more as a descriptor? Like, if you're somebody who watches this show and you're inclined to agree with me on like 90% or more of the issues, what do you like as a descriptor? So let me see. How should I phrase this? What political label is the most accurate descriptor? How should I label this? What political label is the most accurate descriptor? I was going to say if you tend to agree with me, but that sounds kind of douchey. What political label is the most accurate descriptor for you? I guess I'll put. But then there's going to be right-wingers who are like, none of those. And there's going to be moderates who are like, none of those, dipshit. I put in parentheses, they're all similar. So this poll is for those fall in this place on the spectrum? No. What political label is the most accurate descriptor for you? Anyway, guys, here are the options. I'm just going to tell you them here, and then I'll figure out a way to word it. And maybe you guys can help me word it here. But I want to put libertarian left, populist left, and social democrat. Those are the three. Which one do you like most out of those three? Now, how should I word this? What political label is the most accurate descriptor for you? And then I put those three. Does that sound like a good idea? Somebody say it in the chat. Tell me what you think about this. Nazi communist, somebody put. Nazi communist. That was good. Everybody's giving me their answer to the question. How should I word the poll is my question. Populist left. You guys aren't listening to me, are you? How should I word the poll? That's the question. What political label is the most accurate descriptor for you? And then put those three. Does that sound good to you guys, or is that not good? This was a bad idea, Kyle. You're the gay frog. I'm having too much fun with this chat. You guys are going too fast. I think I'm going to have to put on the post per minute thing. Oh, whatever. Let's see. Live control room. Info and settings. I'm such a noob, even though I've done this like a bunch of times. Info and settings. No, that's not it. What are you going to do? No big deal. All right, I'm just wording it the way I put it. I think I worded it in a really shitty way, but I'm going to go with that and just see what you guys say. What political label is the most accurate descriptor for you? What political label do you like the most? I'm going with that. Of these options. Boom, got it. All right, populist left. Libertarian left. Social democrat. I like this poll. I like it a lot. We'll do a 2-hour poll. What political label do you like the most of these options? Populist left, libertarian left, social democrat. Okay, I'm posting this now. So go vote in that Twitter poll, guys. Because I'm tired of when somebody asks me, hey, where do you fall on the spectrum? What would you describe yourself as? I'm tired of saying like all of those, you know what I mean? Like throwing all of them out there and saying, well, I would describe myself as this, but also kind of this and also kind of this. I want to kind of settle on one of those, but they all have their downfalls. So here's why I don't like just progressive. Okay. I'm tired of it. I think it's worn out. I think that it used to not have a negative connotation to it. And then now over the years, it has somewhat of a negative connotation to it. Maybe some of that negative connotation is deserved, but some of it's not deserved. But I'm just tired of the word progressive. It just strikes me as like, it's just boring and stale. And I don't think it's a great descriptor because there's a lot of variation among people who describe themselves as progressive. So like there are progressives who I would consider relatively authoritarian, where they don't have the same belief on freedom of speech that I do. And there may be very big disagreements between me and some other people who describe themselves as progressive. So I think it's kind of like an old term now. It's an annoying term. Not only that, historically, when you look at the term progressive, like the actual progressive era in U.S. politics, which started, I think, in like the 1890s and went to like the 1920s, those progressives were not all that progressive. Like, for example, they were in favor of prohibition. They actually propped up segregation as the status quo. So like the original progressives had some like massive downsides. And then now in the modern era, the definition has evolved But I'm just not a fan of using that word because I think it's so broad and so vague and also just kind of stale and annoying and old, and I'm just tired of it. So progressive, I'm leaving off because I just don't like that. I don't like liberal either because liberal, I think, is too vague. But also now you have people describing themselves as classical liberals, and that has, you know, I don't want to be lumped in with that group because I have massive disagreements with many of the people who describe themselves as classical liberals. And that's another label I think is kind of tired and way too broad to encompass where I would fall on the political spectrum. Now, there are downsides to the ones I just tweeted, though, too. Okay. And by the way, guys, just for a little bit, hold off on the super chats because I got a bunch of stuff I want to talk about, and then I'll get to the super chats. So the downside of let's go one by one for each one. The downside of populist left, that has the least downside, I think. Populism is on the rise. Populism is something that I think is very good. Now, it is true that there are right-wing populists also, or at least fake right-wing populists. So maybe that'll muddy the waters a little bit. Muddy, is that a word? Muddy the waters, whatever it is. And it might confuse some people, but you say left right after populist. So I think that's a good descriptor. I like the term populist left. I think that encompasses where I fall on the political spectrum pretty well. Libertarian left, I also like, but I think the downside of libertarian left is, again, when people hear libertarian, sometimes their brain will shut off and they'll immediately think, like anarcho-capitalist. And I do not want anybody to affiliate whatever I label myself as with anarcho-capitalist. I mean, the libertarian and libertarian left obviously comes from being libertarian on social issues and left on economic issues. But can people make that distinction? I don't know. Now, as far as social democrat, I feel like that's lacking. That descriptor leaves too much unsaid for social issues. I mean, I know it's social democrat, but it doesn't give people a good understanding of where you fall on social issues. So somebody could be a social democrat, and when you hear that, you think of all the economic stuff. You think of, okay, they're for welfare statism, so they're for universal health care and universal education, but it doesn't say much about, where they would fall on marijuana. Like, somebody could be not in favor of legalizing marijuana and be a social democrat. Like, that is possible. You can have social beliefs that are more in favor of tradition and more in favor of order and hierarchy and still be a social democrat. Or at least I think you can fall in that group. Like I don't know all the positions of the social democratic parties in Scandinavia, but my guess is that if you go issue for issue, I actually wouldn't agree with them on everything. So I think that's a term that's already, it generally describes where I fall on the spectrum because I tend to agree with them completely on economic issues or overwhelmingly on economic issues. But I think it just leaves too much unsaid in the other realm. Like social issues. And again, that's kind of the same with populist left too. Like, you hear populist left and you think more economics, there's still questions about, well, hey, where do they fall on social issues? Where do they fall on abortion? Where do they fall on legalizing marijuana? Where do they fall on something like euthanasia? So it's a difficult question, and I've kind of gone back and forth with where the exact term I would want to use to describe myself. Now, for people who are familiar with the show, you already pretty much know where I fall on most of the issues, but I'm a huge proponent of Medicare for all. I'm a huge proponent of free college. I think we should have paid vacation time by law. I think we should have strong unions. I think we should have a living wage. I wouldn't describe myself as post-capitalist, though. I mean, I think there are some ideas that flirt with that realm. Like, I like the idea of worker-owned co-ops where everybody kind of makes the decision democratically in the workplace. But I also wouldn't ban the traditional hierarchy where you have an owner or a boss and then people working under that owner or boss, because I think some people do just want to clock in and do their work and then leave and not directly participate in a democratic sense to run a company. So I'm kind of in favor of both in that sense, worker-owned co-ops and the traditional hierarchy. So I wouldn't describe myself as totally post-capitalist. I do think social democracy and the Scandinavian model is the best systems we have in the world right now, and I think that's empirically proven. But I just struggle with exactly how I would, if somebody asked me and I have to give one label, hey, where would you fall? I don't know. I think I lean towards the one that's losing right now. So far, there's been over 1,000 votes, and 23% say populist left, 24% say libertarian left, and 53% say social democrat. So social democrat is kind of crushing. I think I personally lean towards using populist left because I think that's more original than any of the others. And it also, I think, does probably best explain where I fall, because populist is, okay, so what is popular? What do the people want? And when you go through the opinion polls, it's on almost every issue that I'm with the majority, at least of the American people, but I'm sure if you looked at polls from other developed countries, I'm right smack dab in the middle of them as well. Because, I mean, maybe there's a few issues where that's not the case. Like, I'm not in favor of the death penalty because oftentimes we kill the wrong people 4% of the time. I think that the death penalty is under 50% in the U.S., so maybe that's an example of one area where I'm actually not populist. I'm against the majority. But on almost every issue, I'm right smack dab in the middle. So I'm very curious what you guys are going to say here. I mean, it looks like it almost looks done already because Social Democrat is 52%. I'm a little surprised by that, to be honest, because Social Democrat is already, like, it's already a thing, and it's also a little broad. I like populist left because it's kind of like a new phenomenon, like a new label people are using. Like, there was a time when if you said populist, it was almost always right wing. But I like the idea of populist left because we actually are populist and we are on the left, and nobody really uses that, or that's a modern thing. If anybody uses it, it's very recent that people started using populist and left together. So anyway, that's my random spiel on labels. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. What's the most accurate way to describe where I fall if I had to give a quick, just one flat label? And then, of course, there's the democratic socialism issue, which is, you guys are well familiar with it. We've spoken about it quite a bit on the show lately. Bernie Sanders kind of fucked it all up now, didn't he? He really did. He went out there and he called himself a democratic socialist. When you actually look at Bernie's positions, he's not a democratic socialist. He's not a traditional democratic socialist. He doesn't believe in a post-capitalist philosophy. He believes in the Nordic system, the Scandinavian system. He's a standard social democrat. But since he described himself as a democratic socialist, what happened is a lot of other people started doing that too. And now it's just too far gone. Now, democratic socialist means traditional democratic socialist and also social democrat. So, and I understand that, and I accept that. I understand that there's no way that I alone or myself and like 3 other people can fight back against this giant wave. Like, that train already left the station. It's over on that front. But it is kind of a shame. It is kind of a shame. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think the right people on the far right would smear us anyway, but I think it did make it easier for them to smear us because now you have, all this conflation with, well, I guess you believe in Venezuela. I guess you believe in whatever, the Soviet Union. I guess you believe in Cuba. Because the actual textbook definition for democratic socialism, if somebody is a traditional democratic socialist, it actually is a socialist philosophy. It's a post-capitalist philosophy. And so it makes it easy for people on the right to act like you are totally outside of the mainstream and you're totally beyond the opinions of the American people and you are genuinely radical. And so it's easy for them to smear people on the left like, oh, all of you are post-capitalist simply because Bernie adopted a label, democratic socialist, that is traditionally post-capitalist, even though he's not post-capitalist. So it's that's an issue that is not going to be resolved. The only thing that drives me nuts, though, and I have to say this, is that people have now on the right have taken this and used it as an opportunity to smear the shit out of people who are just social democrats, And the only way to fight back against that is to accurately point out that, no, you're wrong in in saying that this particular person, even though they describe themselves as a democratic socialist, has a post-capitalist philosophy. And again, this gets back to the whole issue with labels to begin with. That's why it's more important to listen to exactly what people say on the issues than anything else, and that's why labels can be misleading, because somebody could call themselves, like I've brought this fact up a million times, but did you know Bernie Sanders during the primary, he actually beat Hillary Clinton among self-described conservative Democrats? Now, you're probably thinking that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. It's just a fact that Hillary is more conservative than Bernie. That's right. It is a fact. Hillary is more conservative than Bernie. So then how did Bernie win among more conservative Democrats? Because people don't know dick about labels. They call themselves conservative, but then when you go through the issues, they turn out to be pretty far left or populist left. And so that's one of those things, man. Like, when you ask the American people, most Americans describe themselves as moderately conservative. But then when you go issue for issue, you find out that they're actually not even center left. They're just on the left. They're on the left. Even many average Joe Republicans. It's like when they were holding up those signs that said, back during the Tea Party rallies, keep your government hands off my Medicare. It's like, oh, you just don't know. Like, you just don't understand that the opinions you have, the beliefs you have, they actually fall on the political spectrum significantly to the left of where you think they do. And that's another thing, by the way, about the Democrats that's so fucking frustrating, is that you can give them a built-in inherent advantage on virtually every single political issue, and they still find a way to bungle it and lose elections, which is just pathetic. I got to plug this in. Hold on. Wow. So yeah, it's just pathetic. And the Democrats are looking to, because they're more with the American people, or at least in theory, they should be on the issues more aligned with Americans, but they find a way to blow that. They find a way to blow that. The Republicans are selling a horrendous product, but they somehow make it more appealing than the Democrats, who should have an easier job selling what their philosophy is. Now, I'll check back to the political label thing in a little bit, but there's some other things I wanted to talk about before I get to your guys' super chats. So just hold on to the super chats for a little bit longer, and then I'll let you know when I'll start answering all the questions like it's a town hall. Jaclyn Glenn, she's in the title of this video. So let's talk a little bit about Jaclyn Glenn. Somebody sent me her video. Something, it was titled like "Why the Left is Failing" or something like that, and I watched it. And here's the thing that's frustrating about that video. She's using her personal experience with people on the left to draw a conclusion about where she thinks she falls on the political spectrum. So she said, yeah, I always lean left. That's always where I've been. But I've had some experiences recently where it kind of turned me off to the left. And, I started watching some Jordan Peterson videos and started watching some Ben Shapiro stuff. And when I watch those things, even though I don't agree with them on a bunch of things, hey, I think they make good arguments. And my liberal friends caught me watching one of those videos. And then, they made it seem like it was almost a deal breaker for our friendship. And it strikes me that people on the left are more closed-minded than people on the right in my personal experience. And therefore, today I consider myself more moderate than I've ever been before. Now, my message to Jaclyn Glenn is very simple. What you just described, like your personal experience, is wholly irrelevant to where you fall on the political spectrum. So, in other words, you can hate with a burning passion every single human being that falls on the left of the political spectrum. But if you take a political compass test and you explain where you fall on the issues, there's going to be an answer. And if that answer is on the left, that doesn't mean that you get to override that simply because you personally don't like the people on the left. And this is something that it annoys me beyond explanation, because that is like what you're doing is you're defining your subjective experience as like the overriding factor and the thing that determines what your beliefs are. And your subjective experience is irrelevant. Even if I loved everybody on the right and thought their personalities were awesome and they're nicer people, that has no reflection whatsoever on what I think about the various political issues and where I would fall as a matter of fact once you do the calculation and do the equation and figure out, okay, this is the descriptor that most accurately depicts where I fall. And, this is one of those things, man. And whenever you see or hear all these different stories, we covered one. There was a guy on Fox News. It was the why I left the left kind of guy. He's like Dave Rubin 2.0. He saw how well Dave Rubin was doing with his whole shtick of, the last sane man on the left, the last liberal left who is now leaving the left because, they're not tolerant anymore. They're not open-minded anymore. And what you'll notice with all of these people is that it always comes down to personalities for them. It's always like, there are meanies on the left that I don't like. And the people on the right seem to be more kind to me. Therefore, now I'm no longer on the left. That's a child's analysis. That's not a serious analysis. Because again, you're letting your personal feelings, your subjective feelings override where you objectively fall on the spectrum. So I don't, and this is somebody, Jaclyn Glenn, she's an atheist YouTuber, and so obviously she values, evidence and science and reason and all that stuff, but you manage to do the most subjective, silly analysis ever. And by the way, I'm not even trying to say that her personal experience is not true, because she knows her personal experience much better than I know her personal experience. It absolutely can be true that everybody that she's spoken to who describes themselves as liberal or on the left or whatever over the past 4 years of her life, maybe they're all pricks. Maybe they're all complete and utter assholes. Maybe they are closed-minded and they don't want to hear other opinions. That absolutely can be true. And if she says it's true, I'm inclined to believe her about her own personal experience. It is her own personal experience. I'm sure people on the right were nice to her, and she says, oh, yeah, they were nice to me, and we could have debates and discussions, and that, it's all fun. That's fine. That's all totally fine, and I'm not doubting any of that for a second. But that has no bearing on you being more moderate. Or like, she's like, oh, I'm more moderate now today because of this. Because people were mean to you on the left. You're not looking at politics for what it is, for policies. You're looking at it as a giant, like, social experience. And that's not what it is. So, I think this gets back to the core of what pisses me off so much about what's going on today, is that this is like everything. This is like everybody's new thing. It's like, oh, I'm just not going to talk about policy at all. Like, policy is just not, I don't care. I'm not going to talk about it. It's irrelevant. It's off the table, even though that's the whole fucking ball game and the whole discussion if you really want to be serious and talk about politics. And it's just, it strikes me as people, they're in over their heads and they're forgetting the main thing you're supposed to focus on if you actually care about politics. So that just drove me nuts. It drove me nuts. And then also, by the way, something I really want to implore people to do, you have to try to put the substance of what somebody's saying above everything about them. So in the case of somebody like Jordan Peterson, who she mentioned in her video, the guy's charismatic. He's a charismatic dude. He's a charismatic dude. He's a good talker. But that doesn't mean that, he crafts good arguments or he's making sense. He could be a very charismatic person. He could be a very convincing talker. But there is this thing called sophistry that exists, and I think people fall into that trap way too easy nowadays. And maybe it's because of the internet. I don't know what it is, to be fair, but it's just, there's this rise of pseudo intellectualism that it's a scary thing, man. And by the way, even with a guy like Alex Jones, who of course is not an intellectual, it's like he manages to get a gigantic audience, and it can't be based on the substance of what he's saying. It just can't be, because if you fact check that guy, I mean, God damn it, you need like a team of 87 people to get through a 10-minute clip of him to fact check him. And the Jordan Peterson thing, I can't get over that. Let's talk a little bit more about him. So I read a great piece. I think his name is Nathan J. Robinson, Current Affairs. Let's see, Nathan J. Robinson, Current Affairs. Jordan Peterson. Now, Jordan Peterson is a guy. It's called The Intellectual We Deserve. That's the article that I'm talking about here. Jordan Peterson is a guy where I honestly do not give a flying fuck about his self-help stuff. If you watch him for his self-help stuff and that gets you going, more power to you. I have no problem with that whatsoever. In fact, I will actively encourage you to listen to his self-help stuff, to listen to his motivational stuff, if it works for you. There is something about a message of personal responsibility where if it's packaged in the right way, if it's sold in the right way, it can really get you going. And his whole thing about clean your room and take care of what you got to take care of and stand up and be a man and like all that stuff. Me personally, I file all that stuff he says in that category in that realm under the duh category. Like when he starts doing the motivational stuff, I'm like, yeah, okay, got it. Like that exactly is how somebody should act and what they should do. And yes, take responsibility and make yourself feel useful. And then even if whatever you're doing feels shitty now, it will pay off in the long term. Like when you're cleaning, you're like, this is fucking annoying. But then when you're done, it's like, oh, this is great. When you're working out, you're like, okay, this is fucking annoying. But then when you're done and you took your shower and you're relaxed, you're like, oh, this is great. So everything he says in that area, I listen to and I go, okay, cool. Yeah, got it. Awesome. But what he does is he takes things that are motivational and make sense, but then he gives you a heaping dose, and he's clever in how he slips it in there, of right-wing politics. So in that article, read that article if you get a chance. It's a pretty long article. It's called The Intellectual We Deserve by Nathan J. Robinson. I don't agree with all of it. I agree with maybe 65% of it or 70% of it. Some of his criticisms I think go too far, aren't quite accurate. But there is some eye-opening stuff in there. And the thing that really made me go, whoa, was, let me see if I could find this quote in his article. When Jordan Peterson basically said, hey, listen, don't even ever go protest because you got to get your own shit together. It's like, wait, what? Don't criticize anything about society until you get your own house in order. And that's where I went, oh, okay, so the self-help stuff is fine, the motivational stuff is fine, but when you drag in the conservative politics, when you drag in, the Christian apologetics, which he's huge on, when he shits on atheists as he does on a regular basis, well, that's when it's like, okay, all that other stuff, you're not even close to sane. Again, if you like the self-help stuff and you want to listen to that, by all means, go right ahead. But if you take him seriously in other areas because he's so good at the motivational stuff, no, just take it for what it is. It's almost like with chiropractors. Like chiropractors, they pretend like they're so much more than they are. They act like, no, I'm like a doctor. I'm like a medical doctor. And it's like, well, no, you're not. You're not. You're a glorified back cracker and like massage therapist. And if you go to a chiropractor, but you take it for what it is, then fine. You're going to get your back cracked because you like how that feels. But if you buy into the whole fucking, what's it called, subluxation theory, and every health problem you have is because your spine isn't straight, well, then you're a dumbass. So I feel like Jordan Peterson falls into that category. How if you listen to the motivational stuff, okay, that's fine. But I think that hooks people in to some of the other stuff. Like he really has argued that atheists who are immoral only think they're atheists. They're not actually atheists. They really, on some level, believe in Christianity. I mean, where do I even begin with that? This is just recycling the old evangelical Christian arguments from the internet from like the early 2000s. So let me see if I can find this. Here we go. Civil rights. Okay. Listen to this quote. Listen to this. This is what Jordan Peterson said about protesting. This happened in the 60s, as far as I can tell, that we got this misbegotten idea that the way to conduct yourself as a responsible human being was to hold placards up to protest, to change the viewpoints of other people and thereby usher in the utopia. I think that's appalling. I think it's appalling. And I think it's absolutely absurd that students are taught that that's the way to conduct themselves in the world. First of all, if you're 19 or 20 or 21, you don't bloody well know anything. You haven't done anything. You don't know anything about history. You haven't read anything. You haven't supported yourself for any length of time. You've been entirely dependent on your state and on your family for the brief few years of your existence. And the idea that you have any wisdom to determine how society should be reconstructed when you're sitting in that absolute lap of luxury protected by processes you don't understand, let's call that a bad idea. The idea that what you should do to change the world is to find people you disagree with and shake paper sticks at them. So he even mentioned this happened in the 60s, as far as I can tell, this misbegotten idea. And then he goes on to describe how it's bad. Protesting is bad. Civil disobedience is bad. Dude, they were protesting for civil rights. Like, they were protesting for voting rights, for civil rights. The whole idea was, hey, maybe we should end legal segregation. Never mind the Vietnam protests, which were absolutely necessary. Never mind the Iraq War protests, which obviously happened under George W. Bush. We need a hell of a lot more of them right now. But the idea that you can't protest unless your room is clean and you have all of your ducks in a row? Are you fucking kidding me? What if Martin Luther King didn't have a clean room? He might not have. I mean, he was cheating on his wife. That's probably the kind of shit that Peterson looks at and says, no, you got to get your shit in order before you try to change society. No, just no. Here's the reality. Should you try to do self-improvement and make sure that, your situation is taken care of and yes, your room is clean and your bills are paid and all that stuff and you're being responsible? Of course you should do that stuff. But you should also realize that you're a human being and you're a citizen and you're part of a society, and we should constantly be trying to improve the system that we live in, especially if the system, like at the time back in the 60s, it had segregation. So yes, people needed to fight back against it in order to make it change. If we're waging offensive wars, we need to protest that to make it change. If people work full time and they don't make enough money to survive, that's not a personal issue, Jordan Peterson. That's a societal issue. That's an economic issue. That's a systemic issue. That yes, you need a labor movement. You need protests. You need people to stand up. You can't solve every problem on your own. That's not the real. So in some ways, he's like an extremist with that ideology. Like, he takes it to its most absurd, caricatured, illogical conclusion imaginable. He literally acts like, oh, shaking a paper stick at somebody is a bad idea because you got to get your own shit in order. It happened in the 60s, and what a terrible thing. So you literally are shitting on the Civil Rights Act and the civil rights protests. That's crazy, man. That's crazy. So anyway, all the way back to Jaclyn Glenn, because that's how this all started. Just because Jordan Peterson's a good speaker, and just because he sometimes makes decent points and sometimes is very good with motivational stuff, doesn't mean he's anywhere near the realm of logical or coherent or sane on other issues. And I feel like with guys like Shapiro and guys like Jordan Peterson, it can be very easy to get like seduced into thinking that they're right about everything just by listening to them. But you should listen to everybody, not just them, everybody, including me. Skepticism, listen, go through it in a nuanced and detailed way. Fact check. There's going to be things you guys agree with me on. There's going to be things you disagree with me on. I would hope that at no point you rent out your brain and say, I'm just gonna lump myself into that category. I'm just gonna be a tribalist for that group because that's a bad idea. Now, to be fair to Jaclyn Glenn, she did say there were plenty of things she disagreed with Jordan Peterson on, which is good. It's good. I just don't understand this idea that because you've had shitty personal experiences with people on the left, now you're more moderate. How does that change anything? You know, there's people I've met on the left that are horrendous. Does that mean that, like, I'm moving to the right now because this guy's an asshole and he's on the left? No, those things are not related at all. Again, even if I somehow in some weird alternate universe became besties with fucking Ben Shapiro and Steven Crowder, that doesn't mean I'm now right wing. It means, okay, I happen to like their personalities and I get along with them on a personal level, but my policy ideas still fall on the left. And she's letting her personal experience cloud her objective judgment. That's the point. The other thing I wanted to talk about, and then I'll get to your questions. This will be the last one before I get to your guys' super chats. Trump and Biden. Oh, boy. Trump said that Biden is his dream opponent. Now, let's think this through a little bit. Trump versus Biden. Trump said that's his dream opponent. No, that's not your dream opponent. Listen, I'm not a big Biden fan. You know, he was part of Obama's administration. I did a whole thing grading Obama's administration. I forget what I gave him. Go watch that segment, Obama's report card. It's a great long segment where it was very detailed and I went into all the policies. I think I gave him like a C or something like that. Maybe a D. Obama got something like that. So I'm not a big fan of them. I think Biden's neoliberal. I think Biden's kind of a centrist-y. But no, you know who your dream opponent is, Don? Cory Booker. That's your dream opponent. Maybe Kamala Harris, but I think she might be smart enough to come across looking more sincere than she is, because I think Kamala Harris is a relatively corporate Democrat. But I think she might be smart enough to find a way to beat you. Cory Booker, I think Donald Trump probably wins that race because he just comes across as like he's full of shit, on top of he actually is full of shit. And there's other people, there's other corporate Democrats who Trump would actually beat. Biden is what I call a bubble boy. So Biden he's a corporate Democrat, but there's just enough. Plus, somebody said Hillary is, that's a good point. Yeah, Hillary is his dream opponent. But with Biden, there's just enough plausible deniability where it's like he can do his little populist tap dance, his fake populist tap dance. And listen, Trump's a fake populist, Biden's a fake populist, and it's just, okay, who's more believable? And I think Biden wins that one. I really do. I think Biden edges it out. I call him a bubble boy because it's possible he could lose to Trump, but the thing is with Joe Biden, you know, the thing that everybody doesn't like about him is actually the thing that would probably let him beat Trump, which is he really does shoot from the hip a lot. Like he said a lot of things. What do you say about like 7-Eleven? Like it's only Indians run it. Something like that. He called Obama like clean and articulate. And everybody was like, oh, dude, you can't say that about a black candidate. What are you doing? He's like, why? He's very clean and articulate. So, but I think that like shoot from the hip, Uncle Joe kind of thing might actually help him. You know who I'm really concerned about now? And this is sad, but I'm really concerned about Elizabeth Warren. I actually think there's a chance that Trump could beat her now. Because every time she opens her mouth, it's clear that she's listening to the Democratic strategists who've been objectively wrong about absolutely everything for the past 2 decades or more. And the more she listens to them, the more likely it is she's going to lose. Like Elizabeth Warren actually has decent instincts in that her gut reaction is usually populist. It's like remember when we learned that the primary was rigged And then we got like, the definitive evidence, and even had Donna Brazile saying, yeah, the Bernie people were right. And then they asked Elizabeth Warren the next day on like CNN or MSNBC or whatever she was on. And she was like, and they asked her point blank, like, oh, so would you say it was rigged? And she was like, yes, it was rigged. That's Elizabeth Warren. That's her instincts. That's when she's just being herself. What happened a few days later was she backpedaled on that. She was like, oh, did I say it was rigged? What I meant to say was it was not rigged, but maybe a little bit rigged. And that might be a little too strong of a word. And I don't know. I think we all need to work together and blah, 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 blah. So I think that the more she listens to strategists, which she's bound to do, the more likely it is that she'll lose. And I don't think she knows how to handle Trump when Trump starts doing petty attacks. I think Trump gets away with the petty attacks. And when some people try to strike back at him and be equally petty, it just doesn't work. He's Teflon. But I think Joe Biden, he's got just enough of that fuck the strategists thing in him where he would probably be able to beat Trump. But I do consider him a bubble boy. Which means he can lose, he can win. It's just a matter, of how the campaign unfolds, what happens with the economy and stuff like that. I'm clicking on, I've got to make sure everything's right with the stream here. Mute the shit out of myself. Is it not even saying how many people are watching? Why the fuck is it not saying that? Do you guys see that? What a weird... I'm watching myself as I'm talking. This is like Kyleception. Okay, 2100. Kyleception, baby. It's so weird. Okay, anyway. So what was I talking about? Oh, Joe Biden. Yeah, so for Trump, what I would say to Trump is, dude, you got to be careful what you wish for, bruv. Actually, I don't know why I would fuck Trump. I don't know why I called him bruv. He can go fuck himself. But I do think that Biden's a bubble boy, but I think he would probably beat Trump. I think Trump should want Cory Booker because I'm pretty sure he would beat Cory Booker. And the Democrats are really trying hard to make it so that Trump wins again without even realizing it, of course. I just read the other day, Democrats are planning on making the Helsinki thing an election issue. So in other words, they're going to like quadruple down on the screaming Putin every 8 seconds. And here's the thing, I got to bring this point up because this is Humanist Report. The Humanist Report made this point. And I had made it a long time ago, but I honestly forgot it. Like I had pointed it out like once or twice, but then it didn't occur to me again. But he pointed it out in a video of his I watched on Russiagate. And I was like, oh, that's right. How did I forget that point? And what he says is, listen, so, okay, you want to make the Russia thing an election issue? Fine. But how do you make it an election issue? Well, there's a very simple way. You prioritize, number one, cybersecurity. You have the DNC, you have the RNC, and you have, whatever, elected officials in the U.S. government propose bills that increase cybersecurity. And the second thing is paper ballots. Tulsi Gabbard proposed paper ballots. And you would think if somebody was really concerned about election meddling and election hacking and all these things that, okay, well, there's an easy way to fix this, paper ballots. So we know we can trust the vote, as opposed to relying on private companies and weird electronic machines. So that's the thing is, so when Democrats say, oh, they're going to make the Helsinki thing an election issue, what that means is we're going to scream more about Russia and more about Putin, but we're going to prod Trump from the right to be harder on Vladimir Putin, as opposed to making the Russia thing an election issue, but saying we care so much about this meddling, which is why we're proposing cybersecurity bills and why we're proposing paper ballots. It's like they never take a real issue and then link it to policy. They'll take that issue and just obviously use it for cheap politics and just to try to get elected without even saying anything. They'll just yelp and scream and bitch and moan, oh my God, Vladimir Putin, oh my God, Russia. And if anything, the resistance will come with no policies attached to it, which honestly is the best case scenario. And the worst case scenario is it'll come with a whole bunch of hawkish policies attached to it. and further economic sanctions and worsening tensions and sending more lethal arms to Ukraine and all that stuff. So, yeah, the Democrats are looking like they're already trying to fuck up the next election. I mean, thankfully, we have some Justice Democrats getting elected, some Our Revolution people getting elected. So there's a chance that we can win this Democratic Civil War. But we got to defeat the leadership. Okay, let's do some super chats now. I see they're rolling in. Hey, Kyle, what are your thoughts on Andrew Yang? He is the guy running in 2020 on universal basic income. Also, love the show, man. I have converted many libertarian friends to the left thanks to you. Hey, thanks, man. Appreciate that. Ethan said that. I honestly don't know Andrew Yang. You said he's running 2020. I'm not sure which office he's running for. Is he running for president? I never heard of him. But I'm sure he'll come across soon if he's indeed running for president. Hey, Kyle, I used to be a Ben Shapiro fan, but you and Pacman helped me flip 180 politically. Would you be doing another top 10 worst conservatives for younger commentators like Shapiro and Crowder? That's a good idea. I don't think I'll do that because I'm big enough now where those guys will fucking viciously attack me. So I probably won't do that, but I might do that. If I get the balls, I'll do that. The top 10 worst millennial political commentators. Candace Owens would definitely make that list for sure. That's a good idea. For those of you that don't know what he's talking about, check out, there's an old video I did, top 10 worst right-wing commentators or something like that. And it's like, Rush Limbaugh, Michael Savage. Bill O'Reilly didn't even make the list because the others were way worse. That's how bad the list was. But it might be time to maybe even just update that list. I haven't thought about that recently, but maybe I should do that. The Carfax sent $50. Thank you. Hillary 2020 boys, third time's the charm. No. Never that. Message retracted. I understand the hate against blackface, but does that mean I can't enjoy artists who have performed in it, like old entertainers like Bing Crosby and newer ones like Robert Downey Jr.? No, of course you can. No. But Dave Chappelle did whiteface. I know that's different, but I'm just using that as an example. Jamie Foxx said on the Joe Rogan podcast, he's like, we all like Robert Downey Jr., so it was okay that he did blackface. We were like, oh, okay. Because it wasn't malicious in how he did it. So context is what matters, man. Context is what matters. And as long as the context is benign, then, anything can be done if it's done right. Don't just gratuitously do blackface and because you're a racist and then pretend like you're not being racist. But if it's in context, it makes sense. You could do it for a reasonable reason. Would you be willing to be interviewed by the Liberalist International Association? We can pay for your flight. No, to hotel to Chicago. We have chapters in Brazil. No, I mean, potentially a podcast or something, but I'm not hopping on a plane. You kidding me? You must be new to this. Me and planes don't go together. Am I the only one who listens to Kyle before bed? Kyle, I appreciate you and just want to support. Also, thanks for having the best voice. That's fake news. I don't have the best voice. But thank you. I appreciate that very much. It's very nice of you to say. I feel like I shouldn't read the super chats that are like over the top nice to me, because then it sounds like I'm sucking my own dick, which nobody wants to hear a guy suck his own dick. or for that matter, see a guy that sucks his own dick. I fell in victim to conspiracy theories that gave me psychological damage. Damn, you helped me become a skeptic. I live in Bible Belt and am around a negative environment. I spent a whole year scared out of my mind. Words can't express. Your videos gave me hope. Wow. Thanks, T-Mac. I really appreciate that. Is this the T-Mac? Is this Tracy McGrady? I'm just kidding. I know you're not actually Tracy McGrady. I'm happy to hear that. I haven't even necessarily made like debunking conspiracy theories like my first priority or anything, but I think I just happened to do it because I cover Alex Jones enough where it's like I end up debunking conspiracy theories. Listen, most conspiracy theories can be debunked just from the motive. Like, just go to the level of what's the motive here. Like, so let's go to the Sandy Hook one. What did Alex Jones say? Obama's doing Sandy Hook because he's going to confiscate the guns. So he needs a pretext to confiscate the guns. Well, he didn't confiscate the guns. So where's your motive? You don't even have motive. The first thing you need in a court case to prove something is motive. Where's the motive? He doesn't even have motive. They didn't take the guns, so he's just objectively wrong, and then you can discuss the other stuff. Usually what they do is they just poke holes in the official theory, and they want you to fill in the dots with the most extreme scenario that they just made up. But they don't even have motive for a lot of these conspiracy theories. The only way a corporate establishment bitch like Biden, Booker, Kamala, or Warren gets the nomination is through another rigged primary, which will only ensure the Dems lose by an even bigger margin in 20. I don't know about that. I think Booker and Kamala will likely lose to Trump. I think Warren's 50-50. I think Biden's 55 in favor, 45 against. Yeah, Trump is he's beatable, but you just need somebody who knows how to fight and knows how to argue, So I don't agree with that. I think that Warren's 50-50, Biden's 55% in favor. I think Booker and Kamala Harris are, maybe 40% chance of beating Trump. Yeah, there is a lot of, Trump has his strong base, but there is a lot of anti-Trump sentiment out there, so he's not totally Teflon, but he can beat corporate Democrats a hell of a lot easier. If you get Bernie or you get any real populist left character, they will absolutely curb stomp Trump. I guarantee you that. You kind of brushed over the 500K voter information hacked part of the Russians' indictments. To me, that's the only remotely relevant part of them. Do you have thoughts on that? No, because to tell you the truth, I don't really understand that. I don't really get that. They got 500,000 voters' information, but they also say that there's zero evidence that they impacted the vote. That's in the indictment as well. And also that there's zero connection between people in the Trump administration and Russia in the indictments. Now, maybe something's coming in the future. I don't know. But in this indictment, that was the case. To me, the thing I took away from this round of indictments was I think it probably was Russia that did the hacks, because it's just too much of a coincidence that Trump asked the Russians, like, hey, get Hillary's missing emails. And then immediately after that, that's when the hack happened. So I think it probably is Russia. Mueller lists literal Russian officials, intelligence officials. It's possible he made all that up. I don't think he made all that up. I don't think it's likely he made all that up. But having said that, the thing that annoys the shit out of me is we still should have seen the DNC emails. We still should have seen the hacks. We still should have seen the leaks, because it exposed that the primary was rigged and there was rampant corruption in the DNC. So in a sense, I don't care how we got that. I just wish we also got the dirt on the RNC. So that's where I differ from the mainstream Democratic position. The mainstream Democratic position now is, oh my God, Russia did it, and it's equivalent to fucking Pearl Harbor or 9/11. I think that is sheer lunacy. I think we should have seen those leaks, even if it was Russia that ended up doing the hacks, which it probably was. Kyle, what do you think about Lieberman's comments on Ocasio-Cortez and his hypocrisy? I think Lieberman is a piece of shit, and I think that this exposes what they always meant when they said unity. Every time you hear it's all a scam. It's a scam. The unity cries, because they only scream unity at you to fall in line behind corporatists. Whenever it's somebody who's on the left that actually wins, like, hey, Ocasio-Cortez defeated Joe Crowley, what happened? All of a sudden, no, they're not talking about unity. Crowley's still on the fucking ballot on the Working Families Party, and he looks like he's going to fucking run and try to throw a wrench in there. And Joe Lieberman wrote an op-ed saying, vote for Joe Crowley. So they don't believe in unity. They believe in corporatism, and they use unity as a tool to serve their ends. So that exposes what's really going on here. And where's Nancy Pelosi, by the way? Where's Nancy Pelosi? Where are the Democratic leaders? Where's Chuck Schumer? Where are they going? Listen, she won the Democratic primary, so we got to go with her. I understand your stance on North Korea. You oppose war over nukes, in favor of diplomacy. Would you allow North Korea to develop nukes if diplomacy failed? Would that open the door for others to do the same? See, it's not really a question of whether or not I'd allow it to happen. It's a question of, are they going to do it or not? So you want to try to stop them from doing it, but you don't. If they end up doing it, what recourse do we have? What are we going to do? What are we going to try to militarily attack them? Because you can't. That doesn't end well. Then they launch on South Korea. Hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people die. So there is no, like, none of us want North Korea to have nukes. But the question is, if they do it, what do we do? And, I've maintained from the beginning, I think it's just an objective fact of reality that they want a nuke for a deterrent. They do. I mean, they see what we've done, and they think, they might attack us, meaning the US, but also South Korea as well, because they're our ally. So they think like, okay, I want something as a deterrent. And listen, this isn't just me saying it. The Pentagon admits this. The Defense Department, there's quotes of generals saying, yeah, they want a weapon for a deterrent. So if they end up doing it, well, that's all the more reason why you need to have diplomacy and you need to have a line of communication open so that we make sure that there's no way that any of these weapons are actually used. Hey, when are you going to stream your show live on YouTube like it's 2018? If you need more money, do another tier on Patreon or fundraise. We will pitch in. There's like setup problems with that. There's other issues with that, but I don't like. David Pakman doesn't do even any live show. He just records his show and then releases it. And when TYT does their show, they stream their show live, but then it doesn't log in. It doesn't log so that you can go watch it immediately after. They clip it up and send it out. I mean, that's kind of the model that everybody who's in this space does. Everybody who's in news and politics does. Because it's the best model to release the most videos. So it's kind of on purpose that I do it the way it's done, where we have just audio live, and then if you want to watch the videos are released chopped up. If Elizabeth Warren ran, I feel that Trump would continuously bash her over the head with the whole Pocahontas thing, and that alone could have a very negative effect on her chances. But Alan, see, here's the problem with that, man. So what? So what if he does that? Because this is a problem that Democrats always have, which is like, what if the Republicans do X? Well, if you know what you're doing when you're playing politics, your response should be, I don't care if they do that, because then I'm going to fucking counterattack. I'm going to, like, okay, so every time he brings that up, just you need to have a counter argument. I can't think of a good counter argument at the moment, but when they go low, we go high shit, that's got to stop. It's got to be, no, you want to punch below the belt? I'm going to punch below the belt too. Now, that doesn't mean like you have to be equally distasteful when you punch back. Like, you could punch back on something that lands better because it's more substantive. I don't know, if he starts screaming about Pocahontas, you start talking about how weird how you're always personally attacking. You want to talk about the fact that wages have been falling under your administration? I don't know, something like that. You could go divert it back to policy, show that you're serious, but also don't hold back and be aggressive. Like this idea of like, oh my God, he might say X. So what? Roll with the fucking punches. That's what Trump did. When Hillary said something, Trump would fire back and, change the flow of the conversation and make it so that even if she said something that landed, okay, let's roll with the punches there, and then I'm going to flip it back on you in one way or another. This is why you need people who are leaders and who don't just listen to strategists. You need people who know how to argue, who know how to debate, who know how to discuss these things, who know how to roll with the punches if Trump goes below the belt like that, and do it in a way where it's verbal jujitsu, man. That's what these debates are. It's verbal jujitsu. And Trump is good at it by accident. He's not even good at it because he knows what he's doing. He's good at it by accident. So it's easy to beat him. She just needs to, if she stops listening to every Democratic strategist right now and ran the campaign now, she would beat Trump. But if she listens to them, that's when she's going to fuck up. But the Pocahontas thing, she could easily override. Are you fucking kidding me? There's so much more dirt on him than on her. There's fucking accusations from like over a dozen women that he sexually assaulted them. So he's gonna bring a Pocahontas about her, and that's the end of the conversation. Please, there's so much fodder for material there to respond. Hey Kyle, you should get former WWF booker Jim Cornette on the show. He's a social democrat too, and it can make for a fun stream shooting the shit about wrestling and politics. Why do you use standard of living as a measure of which political ideology is better? Hyper-colonial Britain and Nazi Germany had high standards of living. Okay, no offense, but that's one of the dumbest things I've ever read in my life. They were fucking... Nazi Germany was massacring people. The standard of living wasn't good for the Jews in Germany. Colonial Britain, they were fucking occupying people. I mean, you're using that metric. So you're saying it only, the standard of living was high. Sure, it was only for the fucking pure Aryan race people in Nazi Germany, but their standard of living was high. Yeah, but what about all the other people under those systems where the standard of living wasn't high? I mean, yes, standard of living is a great measure for how a country is doing, but its standard of living counts for all the people in the country, not just like, the standard of living. Like, okay, if I go to Orange County and measure standard of living there, yeah, standard of living is really high in Orange County. Now, if we could somehow get that same standard of living all throughout the United States, then yes, we would be a country that's in really good shape if everybody was doing as well as they're doing in Orange County. Like, sure, the Aryans in Nazi Germany, their standard of living was high. What about all the people who were living in the ghettos or who were in a fucking concentration camp? So, no, the standard of living, of course it matters. It just matters in your entire country. So, I don't... That was a bad point. Kyle, big fan. Do you think you might move to Los Angeles? TYT is out here. Life is better out here. You should consider. Please shout out my name. Thanks. Alistair Hackett. Thank you, Alistair. And the answer is no. I have no interest in moving to LA. I mean, I went out there and I did TYT and I did Joe Rogan and I had fun, but I couldn't see myself doing that more, like maybe once a year, even though I hate planes, but maybe once a year I'd do it, but that's probably it. How to argue with people whose livelihoods depend on being on the wrong side. I've tried speaking with a big oil scientist, and these people aren't stupid. They just don't get to choose their opinion. Yeah, I mean, listen, how to argue with people when their livelihood depends on arguing the opposite side, you're not going to change their mind. At that point, it's kabuki theater. They're not going to change their mind. They're just not going to do it. And it's heartbreaking, but it is what it is. You know, I always talk about how I try to focus on the people whose minds are changeable on the show. You know, like the people who voted for Trump because they thought he was anti-establishment and economically populist. But don't get me wrong, there are some people who I call TFG. That stands for too far gone. You know, maybe 25% of the country, whether it's the super fundamentalist evangelical Christians, you know, or the hardcore white supremacists. I mean, I guess technically they're not all too far gone because some of them will reform in due time and become more reasonable and de-radicalize themselves. But I don't spend my time trying to, like, your hardcore Ted Cruz voter is not somebody I'm ever going to convince, most likely. It'd be nice if I could, but some people are too far gone. People who are paid to be on the wrong side, they seem like they're too far gone too because they have a financial incentive to be on the other side. Can you get Stephanie Kelton on the show? Yeah, Stephanie Kelton. I think I've reached out to her before. She's the MMT person. She was actually one of Bernie's economists. So I've tried. Stephanie, if you're watching, we could have a conversation. I do have a lot to ask her about too, because she's an MMT economist and she knows a lot more about that stuff than I do. Sorry, I forgot the plane thing. LIA will contact you by email and Twitter. When would be a good time to do the podcast? We'll figure that out in the correspondence. We don't need to air it out in front of everybody. I'm trying to get all these guys. I don't want to miss them. How to argue with people. Kyle, considering Trump bleak performance at the summit with Putin, do you think anything can sink Trump's presidency? It depends what you mean by sink it. Impeach? I don't know. Because you have a Republican House and a Republican Senate. So I don't think they would impeach him under almost any circumstance. But in terms of sink, as in like, oh, will contribute to him losing the next election? Hell yeah. Hell yeah. I mean, he's already under 50% pretty significantly. So he's definitely beatable. You just have to not have a corporate Democrat run against him, and you have to have a Democrat who knows how to fight and who doesn't come across as overly coached and listening to Democratic strategists. Hey, Kyle, have you heard about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's interview where she was asked about the Israel-Palestine conflict? If so, what did you think of it? I didn't see the interview, but I saw that she said she believed in a two-state solution, and there were people to her left that were mad at her. Now, here's what I have to say about that. I used to be in favor of a two-state solution because I thought it was the most reasonable way to solve the problem. I thought it was more likely than a one-state solution. But now, after what happened with the embassy in Jerusalem, after what happens with the continued building of new illegal settlements, it just strikes me that the only way to do this is a one-state solution with equal rights. Now, there is no real solution because it's going to be messy no matter how you do it. But I think that people who are to the left who also believe in a one-state solution with equal rights, I think they need to be understanding of people who still believe in a two-state solution, because not everybody's already evolved to the position where you are. So you have to educate people. You have to explain to people why it is you believe what you believe, and explain to them that this is the best solution and why it's the best solution. And I think that just getting angry at her is like, why are you doing that? You know she agrees with you on at least 90% of the issues. You know she's open to hearing criticism. You know she's open to evolving if you make a good case. If you have a candidate who's for Medicare for all and free college and a living wage and ending the wars, she's obviously reasonable. So why just shit on her because of that? The one thing I saw that I was like, whoa, that's weird, but it could have just been a misleading headline, is when they said she apologized, or she nearly apologized, for calling the recent massacre that Israel did to Palestinians. Like, she apologized for that. She apologized for using the word massacre or something like that. That I would disagree with her on. I just don't know if she actually did that. They may have just been a misleading headline. Sorry for the plane. I'm going over the same ones here. Love your content, Kyle. I watch your show every day and am a proud patron. Keep it up. Thank you, Diego. I appreciate that. Thanks, guys. It's real awesome of you to say stuff like that. Patreon.com/secular talk if you want to throw me like $2 a month. I really appreciate that. You guys definitely keep the show going. And I really like I like the grassroots funded thing. It makes me feel better. I feel better about, you guys listening and basically tipping me $2 a month or $5 a month or whatever you do. Because we were too reliant. It wasn't just me. It was David Packman. It was a lot of us. We were too reliant on YouTube's goodwill. Like, they can just yank the ads willy-nilly. And there was a time where they yanked all of our ads and we were on some sort of blacklist. And then now there's like we basically make half of what we used to do through YouTube. And that's just the permanent state of affairs. So that is what it is. It's never going to be what it was during the election. We're probably in some like second or third tier level monetization. So I like the grassroots funding more. It feels better. Your own correct positions on Russiagate and Assad chemical attacks make you a conspiracy theorist. By your own standards, wouldn't you agree? Since those positions go against MSM narratives. Well, it depends what the definition of conspiracy is. So, I would argue that a lot of the shit that they're pushing is conspiracy shit. Like they really do believe at this point in the most extreme version of Russiagate. Like, they really believe that Donald Trump is Vladimir Putin's puppet. There are people I know and respect who do what I do, who say he is a puppet to Vladimir Putin. He's a Manchurian candidate. Like, the Russian president put him in power in the U.S. Basically, this is what they believe. That his whole thing is to do Putin's bidding. There are people who believe that, and a lot of people in MSM believe that. And I would say that they're the conspiracy theorists. Because what always happens is their whole theory relies on disregarding all the evidence that disproves their theory. So Donald Trump sent weapons to Ukraine. Obama wouldn't do that because Obama didn't want to be that anti-Russia. Trump did that. He sent weapons to Ukraine. He bombed Assad's troops. He withdrew from the Iran deal, which pissed off Russia. He increased sanctions on Russia. He put U.S. warships in the Black Sea. So that's 5 policies that are concrete against Russia, but you have people who still believe he's his puppet. Well, if he's his puppet, he's the worst kind of puppet ever because he's not doing the things that Putin would want him to do. So it's just weird that, I think they're the conspiracy theorists. Because when I say, hey, man, let me see your evidence for a chemical attack before you actually drop bombs, how does that make me a conspiracy theorist? It makes me reasonable. It makes them conspiracy theorists if they say, we're not going to do the investigation, but we know Assad did it and we're going to bomb right now. So I don't think maybe I'd say some conspiracy theories are true, but I think most of them aren't. And oftentimes the mainstream media pushes conspiracy theories and I'm the one debunking them. Don't have time to listen to this, but hello from Ohio and thanks for all you do. Also, as a pilot, I find it funny you hate flying. That's pretty funny. And that comment makes me smile. It's pretty funny. I'm not going to listen to this, but here, have $5. Thank you. I appreciate that, Mr. Affleck. What do you think of PolitiFact giving Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez a pants on fire for her statement about low unemployment? I didn't read that, but I'm going to because that sounds like bullshit. PolitiFact. This is what they try to do. They try to find people on the left to disagree with so that they could say, we're not biased. Okay, I'm going to read that later. I'll take a look at that later. I don't want to bore you guys and sit here and try to read it. Message redacted. I love my mother dearly, but she's an avid Rush Limbaugh and Fox News listener. Have you ever had this experience of having someone close to you who holds ridiculous beliefs? Of course. Of course. I have, some extended family members who are very Republican. My mom used to be a Republican. Now she's kind of like an independent swing voter, but I think she voted Democratic. She didn't vote for Hillary or Trump, but she did vote for Obama twice, I think. So, of course, I have extended family, aunts, uncles who are very, very right-wing. My dad was a weird kind of right-leaning conspiracy guy when he was alive. Kyle, do you think Dems will try again to rig 2020 primary, or do you think they will rely on the field being so crowded they will let things play out? I think that if Bernie runs, he's going to trump them, literally. Even if they try to rig it, he can overcome their fuckery. Hey, Kyle, how do we get cities throughout the U.S. to adopt municipally operated and owned high-speed internet access? Seems like it is very important with the death of net neutrality. I would recommend going to, local meetings, city council meetings, whatever it may be, even if you got to go to the some sort of state get together, go to the state government, talk to your representatives there. The only way anything gets done with stuff like this is hard work. You just got to show up. You got to have your voice heard. You got to power in numbers, so have other people show up too. That's really the only way to get it done. Thoughts on Israel passing Jewish nation state law, making it fully Jewish state and takes Arabic off of the official language down to a special status. Love your channel from Norway. Yeah, I think, and in that same bill, I think they said, oh, we need to make more Jewish-only, settlements. Okay, so, you're codifying the apartheid completely. That's what that is. It's imagine in South Africa, they were like, yeah, no, we just got to, listen, it's no big deal, but we're just going to have some more white-only settlements. Okay, yeah, that would be apartheid. That would be you're codifying it again. No, it's no big deal, but we're just saying that we're going to have more areas that are only for whites. That's apartheid. That's what that is. That's what that is. That's what that is. And Israel does it, and it's just only democracy in the Middle East. Hashtag liberal values as we act super far right wing. Unbelievable what they get away with. Ever watch Ben Shapiro's show or other right wing shows? I've seen their stuff, but no, I don't watch their shows on like a regular basis. Hell no. But obviously I've seen their stuff. I have to, given the space I'm in and the stuff I cover. Hey, Kyle, I'm thinking about joining the military, but I'm having trouble with justifying possibly adding to U.S. war crimes. What are your thoughts? P.S. I love your show. I wouldn't join. I mean, that's just me. I'm a bitch, and I'll be upfront about that. Like, I'm sure that I feel like my self-preservation thing would come out all the time, even if it was a war that I felt like, no, this is noble. Like, if I was around during the Greatest Generation and like, oh, we got to fight the Nazis, like, I would know that that's the right thing to do because Hitler's fucking a madman and he's declared war on the U.S. And I'd be like, I want to defend my country, but I'm such a bitch. I don't know if I'd have the will to do it. But at the same time, like today, where we know that the wars we're fighting they're not existential threats. We're fighting in Iraq. Are you kidding me? We're bombing 8 different countries. We're still in Afghanistan. I would say not only don't do it, but it's probably your moral responsibility not to do it. Now, don't get me wrong. If there was some sort of Hitler-like character, all of a sudden it becomes a moral thing to join the army and fight against the Hitler character. But we're not fighting the Hitler character. We're not even fucking narrowing our scope to fighting ISIS. We're not even doing that. We're fucking de facto on the side of ISIS because we've been bombing Assad's troops and Assad is fighting ISIS. So I would say don't do it. But, I understand that there might be other reasons why you would want to do it. So maybe if you wanted to join the military and do something not combat related, that's something you could do. Worry if Trump actually does go down over Russia. Pence uses it as an excuse to suspend elections indefinitely, dictator style. Congress, SCOTUS, and even the U.S. military may actually go along with it. I don't think so, man. I don't think so. That's I never got on board with that. Like, the right-wingers used to say that about Obama, like, he's going to stay in more than 2 terms. And my whole thing was like, okay, you might think that, but just admit you made that up. Like, there's zero evidence for you to say that. And I feel the same way with Trump. It's like, even though he has a very authoritarian impulse, super authoritarian impulse, he's not going to stay in past... Plus, who knows if he's even going to survive that long. I mean, the dude's kind of overweight and he's like 72. So I don't think that's going to happen. Could you do a segment on the ridiculous Chicago body armor ban? Also, would you consider doing some sign? I try whenever I see sign stuff that I'm interested in, but I don't see that much of it, to be fair. A segment on the Chicago body armor ban? I don't know what that is. They banned it for regular people, or are you saying they banned it for the cops? I'm not sure. I saw somebody mention something about watch the Peter Schiff Joe Rogan thing. Yeah, I saw some of it. I mean, listen, here's what I give Peter Schiff credit for. He correctly predicted the 2008 recession. But here's the thing. That wasn't that hard. He predicted it. Bill Maher predicted it way back in the day. So people on the left, people on the right, it was libertarians and people on the left who predicted it because it was so obvious to see we were in a bubble. So I give him credit for that. Outside of that, he's just a standard libertarian. Like, I don't find anything unique or anything interesting. It's just very, fucking read an Ayn Rand book and what Peter Schiff's opinion is going to be, his position is going to be on whatever issue it is in question. So it just strikes me as very banal libertarian stuff. Sometimes I tend to agree with libertarians on social issues, but I tend to disagree with them massively on economic issues. In fact, I find their position almost laughable on economic issues, how opposed they are. It's almost like a religious belief they have against government. Like, government's never the answer. Regulation is never the answer. I watch 1 hour of your show and I know what goes on in the US and the world. My dad watches 3 hours of CNN and can't tell me anything past Russia. Then again, he's 65. Their demographic, money well spent. That's so true, man. It really is Russia all day long on CNN and MSNBC. It really is comical. Like, it was really weird watching the entire internet have like a psychotic breakdown over the Helsinki thing. Because that's what it felt like. It felt like watching people in real time have a psychotic breakdown. Like, the tweets I was reading were hysterical. It was like everybody was under some collective spell or something. Could someone live on a $10.50 an hour wage? This is minimum wage in, Orange County, by the way. You would have to crunch the numbers and see what a living wage would be like there. My guess is in Orange County, that's not enough to be a living wage. But that's my ideal minimum wage law. What you would actually do is calculate the living wage either by county or by voting district. And then so you have different minimum wages throughout the country, and it's a living wage everywhere. So in New York City, for example, it might end up having to be like $23 an hour. But then in rural Wyoming, it might only be $10.27. And it would be a living wage everywhere around the country, and you chain it to inflation. That would be my ideal, but that's not going to happen. Fight for 15 already has so much strength behind it. But then again, you can negotiate from the Fight for 15 position to my position, where it's higher and lower depending on the place. Message redacted. Thoughts on RFK, and do you like Post Malone? Greetings from Vancouver. Okay, so on the Post Malone thing, I'm so out of the loop. Like, I don't know any of the new fucking people, musicians, artists, whatever the fuck you want to call them, rappers. So I'm like an old grandpa when it comes to that stuff. As far as RFK, I watched the Netflix documentary on him. Yeah, he was okay. I mean, I think that those guys are more like, he was more of a follower than a leader, you know? Like, even on questions of civil rights, it was like, okay, where's the wind blowing? Oh, yeah, totally. I'm on this side. So it's a little, I think he's probably gets a little too much credit, but that's what happens oftentimes with like Reagan, JFK, like they're glorified too much, you know, as if they were saints when really they were political animals. People ship you with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and with Paula Jean Swearengin. Which of these shippings do you prefer? Either one of them, because I absolutely love them both, and I think they're great. Are you familiar with left-wing YouTuber Jamal Thomas? If so, what do you think of him? Is that the progressive soapbox guy? Because if that is, then I like him. I've seen a few of his things, and he's really smart, nuanced, doesn't feel the need to say things that would put him on a team. He's willing to say things that might even piss off his audience, but if he thinks it's true, he'll say it. I like that guy. I've heard you mention using finasteride. I've considered using it, but I'm terrified of ED. How is it? Are you experiencing side effects? I'm not experiencing side effects, and I'm fine with it. But some people do have that issue. Some people can't get hard, and some people had even depression issues. But I haven't had any issues with it. But that's just me. It's very individual in the side effects. I study political science in Russia. Oh no! See, I'm now going to be tarred with being a Russian agent. Wanted to get a degree in America. Now I'm afraid to come because of this witch hunt. Don't know what to do. Big fan. That breaks my heart to hear that, because we're in our own little insular bubble here in the U.S. in many respects. And, I've had that moment a few times where I'm like, damn, this really seems like it's like the way that they throw around. Have you seen those headlines where they throw around like the Russians? Like it says the Russians, and every time it says the Russians, it's a negative connotation. It's never just like a factual, like, oh, this thing happened with the Russians. It's always like the Russians, like with a negative connotation to try to like be like some conspiracy thing happening and the Russians are behind it. And I'm not kidding when I say this. I cringe sometimes when I read it in context, because it honestly reminds me of like when people used to say the Jews in like big time anti-Semites, and are like the Jews control the banks. That's the way that they throw around the Russians now. And I always just want to tell people who throw it around willy-nilly, like, can you be a little more specific? Like, even if you're talking about Trump and you think he's got the corrupt dealings and he is beholden to the Russian government, could you at least say, like, the Russian government, or Russian oligarchs or something to make it sound less fucking bigoted? Because when the Russians, it really does have that fucking feel to it. So, Russophobia, or whatever they're calling it, Russophobia, however you say it, it seems real. What's your solution to the issue of small businesses not being able to afford increases to the minimum wage? P.S. Love your videos. So the thing is, anytime you implement a minimum wage increase, it's always overtime. That's the only way to do it, is overtime. It's not like, oh, hey, that's just my opinion and, that's the responsible way to do it. No, it's just that anytime there's been a minimum wage increase throughout history, whether at whatever level of government, it's done slowly over time, because that's the only way to make it feasible and doable. And what happens is, as long as you set the minimum wage at a reasonable level, and as long as you increase it gradually over time and then get to your living wage level and then tie to inflation, it's all going to work out. And the studies show that unemployment does not go up, which means that by definition, the businesses can afford it. So it's just a matter of implementing it in the right way and not going from like $7.25 and then you wake up tomorrow and it's 15, and then a business has to lay off 6 people because they simply can't afford them. So it's just about doing it in an intelligent way, and then you don't run into those problems. How do I explain to close friends who are Trump supporters that employment is not a good sign of how the economy is doing? Just tell them. Say, listen, you want to have an economy? We can have an economy with 0% unemployment. 0% unemployment. Wow, that sounds like a dream. What a perfect economy that would be. How do you do that, Kyle? It's a little thing I like to call slavery. In a slave system, you could have 0% unemployment. Forced labor. Whoever's not working, hold a gun to their head, say, you're going to work now. There's 0% unemployment. Boom. So, you could spin that and say, the economy is doing so well, we have 0% unemployment. Yeah, but you also have slavery. So what you tell them is that, say, you could have 0% unemployment, slavery. Unemployment's not a good measure. Wages are a much better measure. So unemployment is just a shitty measure because you have low wage job creation. So people are working these miserable jobs. So, they have a job, but they're fucking miserable and they don't make a lot of money. Does the Helsinki backlash from both sides scare you for the fact that Trump may retaliate with military pressure? Also, what are your kratom dosages for different desired effects? I do like 3 tablespoons usually. And if I want to feel more up, I'll do 2. If I want to feel more down, I'll do like 4. But usually I don't do 4. Usually I do like 3. As far as the backlash, yeah, man, that's my fucking fear. That's my fear about the whole Russia thing. It all ties back to policy, is that the more you scream at Trump that, oh my God, you're Putin's puppet. Oh my God, you're Putin's puppet. Oh my God, you're Putin's puppet. You have to do something to prove that you're not his puppet. Well, then how do you prove it? By being more hawkish, by being more belligerent, by increasing tensions, by doing a worse standoff. And that's probably why he sent weapons to Ukraine. They're fighting Russia. Okay, so we're arming Ukrainians to fight Russians. That's why we bombed Assad's forces, or one of the reasons why. That's why one of the reasons why we withdrew from the Iran deal, although another reason is Netanyahu told Trump to do it. What happened? Is Trump Netanyahu's puppet? Because that seems much more likely to me, and there's actually evidence to support that theory. And he increased sanctions on them, and there's U.S. warships in the Black Sea right this second. So yes, that's the problem. That's the fear, is that you keep prodding him from the right, and then eventually he'll try to prove you wrong, and he'll be super hawkish. He's already being hawkish. He'll be even more hawkish the more you tell him he's a puppet. That's the fear. Could you do a segment on Andrew Gillum? He's a progressive running for governor and not getting much local coverage compared to other Democrats. What state is he in? I've never heard of this guy. Andrew Gillum. I'll pull this up and I'll read it later. for Florida, progressive in Florida. Yeah, I'll take a look at him later. Trump's answer to the Brexit question in the video you posted reminded me of some of those dumb answers from beauty pageants. Yeah, that's true. And very much like Bush's tribal sovereignty answer. What's your opinion of Henry Wallace and Harry Truman? Also, was the dropping of the atomic bombs necessary? How many civilians did we kill? 200,000? 100,000? 200,000? Something like that? Yeah, no. Shouldn't have done that. I think that when people are so convinced that it was the right thing to do, I don't think they know what they're talking about. Because all the evidence suggested that the war was basically over. So why would you do it when the war was basically already over? I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm never in favor of purposely killing civilians because that makes you terrorist. So we did a terrorist act. Oh, and Henry Wallace. That's the guy who, in Oliver Stone's documentary, right? Who was the progressive who was going to win, almost like the Bernie Sanders back then. Do I have that right? Is that the guy? I don't remember, but I think that's him. And if that's him, then he was a badass and he got screwed. History documentary recommendations, non-biased only, trying to learn about the whole history from Columbus from now, already informed about 60s hippies for the win. History documentaries. I don't know the names of them, but I've seen a bunch. Like I've seen a zillion documentaries on World War II. And I just don't know the names. I would recommend just going to Netflix, though, and watching. I love Netflix documentaries. I think they're usually very good. So if you go to Netflix and you look at the documentaries, you're going to find a bunch of good stuff. So I highly recommend doing that. Greetings from Spain and good night. We've had a terror strike because of supporting the Iraq war. 200 deaths, an impeachment against the right, and now we have a left-wing establishment-friendly government. Good change or bad? Well, I'm always in favor of the furthest left possible option. So, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not in favor of like communism, but usually I like the furthest left option because they don't even get everything they want anyway. So even if I pick somebody to the left of me, I'm probably not going to get those super far left policies because there's always, compromise and stuff in government. But is it a good thing to have a left-wing establishment person over a right-wing person? Yes. Yes. I mean, it's an argument over the tallest kid in kindergarten, but yes. Hi, Kyle. I'm a fan and an engineering student. I've worked in the medical industry. However, the company is not going to Europe because there is no profit. How do we fix this when single payer comes? Well, I'm not so sure that's a problem that needs to be fixed, man. The problem now is the opposite end of the spectrum. The problem is there's price gouging going on. So the way it works in the US is you have taxpayer money funding research for medicine. And then they create the medicine. And then a company comes in, buys the rights to the medicine, and charges you again and price gouges the shit out of you. So you pay for the research and development, you create the drugs with your taxpayer money, and then a for-profit company comes in there, grabs the drugs, and then charges you again. So we're getting screwed. We're getting price gouged. There's no doubt about that. Now, it obviously depends what part of the medical industry you work in, because I'm obviously talking about pharmaceuticals right now, but we have unique problems in the US that other developed countries don't have on this front. I think that there are certain industries that just need to be nationalized. Now, I'm in favor of supplemental private insurance. So if you can get the option of extra insurance, but there needs to be a default universal system that's a public system, that's a nationalized system. So I'm not so sure that that's a problem that needs solving. I think the opposite is the real problem. History documentary, already did that. Trying to click through. We tried to contact you through Secular Talk Radio, but it said the site account was suspended. Oh, I got to check that out. What other way should we try to contact you? Probably Twitter is the best way. I'm notoriously hard to reach. Don't feel bad. I'm very hard to reach. Hey, Kyle, here in South Carolina, we voted GOP in the general since 1980. Bernie only pulled 26% in the Dem primary. Then Clinton pulled 41%. Are progressives like me shit out of luck for the foreseeable future? No. That was a matter. Listen, in the last election, Hillary got way more of the black vote than Bernie did. That's why. That's why Hillary beat Bernie by that much in South Carolina. But Bernie, his name recognition is a lot higher now. His approval rating among everybody, including African Americans, has skyrocketed. Now I think more African Americans know who he is, and then he's likely to do a lot better in those elections in the future. That's what I think. Because that's why Hillary won there, because of the black vote. But now I think Bernie would do very well with the black vote. Can you upload the full radio show in one video? YouTube keeps trying to send me to CNN between segments. Haven't missed episodes in 14 months. Big fan. No, but what I do have is you can look at the what's it called? Why am I blanking on what it's called? Playlist. I have a playlist that has all the videos from each show. So if you want to listen to it in a row, you just click on the playlist. But sometimes it takes a few days before the playlist is created because it takes a few days before all the videos from a given show are released. What do you think of other electoral systems like MMP or ranked voting? I feel like it would be great because we wouldn't have to run as Democrats, but I've never heard progressives bring this up. Yes, you have. I've brought it up. I know TYT has brought it up. I support ranked choice voting. I think ranked choice voting is a wonderful idea. Show us your legs. Oh yeah, baby. Look at these bad boys. Look at that. Can you see it? Hold on, I gotta see. You gonna make me stay in this fucking position, you bastard. Let's see. Yep. There's my leg right there. Okay. There. I got legs, bitch. It looks tiny. Damn. It's the angle. God damn it. It's the fucking angle. Damn you. Everybody, I tweeted my golf swing the other day, and people were making fun of my legs. They were like, look at those calves, those bitch calves. That is true. I do have bitch calves. I do have to say that. I have very bitch calves. The leg is a lie, somebody said. Fake news. If you want to bash your head against the wall, watch the video of Ben Shapiro listing what he believes are the worst 5 presidents ever. He has FDR and LBJ on the list. Putting FDR on the list is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. I mean, don't get me wrong. He did Japanese internment, which is beyond fucked up. But putting aside that, like, he kept getting elected because the country fucking loved him. Left wing, right wing, everybody loved him because he was objectively doing good for the country. That's why Republicans came up with term limits after that, because he was so fucking popular that they were like, we're never going to be able to win again if they keep electing social democrats like this, so we're going to have to come up with term limits. TJ Kirk did a good video, by the way, on Ben Shapiro, when Ben Shapiro, like, how to debate and destroy leftists. He was given like a speech on that, and TJ Kirk ripped it to shreds and was like, you're guilty of all the things you accuse the left of being guilty of. You need to call Sargon out for his antics lately. He did a smear video on Ocasio-Cortez by naming the video Red Cortez and keeps wearing a MAGA hat. Listen, man, he's going to do what he wants to do. He's, he's... I don't know if he would disagree with this assessment, but I think he's shifted to the right. I think he's moved to the right. Outright supporting Trump. I heard him say that in his interview with the Progressive Voice. There's no getting through there. There's no getting through. And yes, I didn't watch the video, but people were messaging me about it. Like, look at this video from Sargon going after Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And, the crux of the video is she's an actual democratic socialist in the sense that she's post-capitalist. That's not true. That's just factually wrong. Now, how do I know that? Well, number one, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was one of the first Justice Democrats. I know her personally. I know everything she believes. I know where she stands on all the political issues. She's not post-capitalist. That's just not true. Furthermore, the other day, who was the guy that went after her? One of the Proud Boys. What's his name? Proud Boys. Sounds so stupid even saying it. Gavin McInnes, like, tweeted something at her, like, angry or some shit because he's so macho. And Alexandria responded by basically, like, implying, like, no, he tweeted a link like, oh, you used to support tax cuts for businesses. Now you don't, Alexandria, huh? And she responded and was like, well, actually, I do. I support tax cuts for small businesses and tax increases on corporations, on big businesses. That's my belief. That's not contradictory. That's perfectly like me. Me, for example, I, Kyle, support tax cuts on small businesses. I do. And I support tax cuts for the middle class and poor people. I do. I support tax increases on Wall Street and tax increases on the rich. You're allowed to do that. You're allowed to say, I want to raise taxes on the rich and not on working families. That's Alexandria's position. So let me get this straight. The argument is she's post-capitalist, but she's arguing for small business tax cuts. So if you're post-capitalist, you don't even think small businesses should exist if they have a traditional capitalist hierarchy of, an owner or a boss and then people working underneath. Not only is she okay with those businesses existing, she wants to give those businesses a tax cut. The idea that she was endorsed by DSA, therefore she's a democratic socialist. Bernie Sanders was endorsed by DSA. He calls himself a democratic socialist. Alexandria calls herself a democratic socialist. Listen to their explanations of what democratic socialism means to them. They are traditional social democrats. They are not post-capitalist. Now, you can say, hey, man, they should stop calling themselves democratic socialists then. Okay, fair enough. They are using that definition incorrectly. But at this point, that definition has evolved because Bernie was the first one to call himself a democratic socialist, even though he's a social democrat. That cat's too far out of the bag. That train's left that station. There's no going back. But at the very least, you shouldn't straw man these people and act like they believe things that they simply do not believe. So that's my take on that. Didn't mean I believe Pence will suspend elections, said I'm worried about it. More worried about Trump ordering strikes on Russia if backed into a corner. I hope he doesn't. We'll see. You and me in a tag team take on Paul Joseph Watson and Alex Jones. No, I'm scared of Alex Jones. I will do, and by the way, Anthony, how do I say your name? Fontano? I'm going with that. I probably put the emphasis on the wrong syllable there. But so that's the needle drop, everybody. Yeah, I would do it with you and Paul Joseph Watson, but Alex Jones, no, not Alex Jones. That dude he'll have a gun to my head or something by the end of the night. Why do Republicans vote against their own self-interest? I don't get it. It has a lot to do with the marketing of the Republican Party, how they kind of are lied to. So Republicans pretend like they're the friend of the working man. Like when Republicans talk about tax cuts all the time, they're packaging that and selling that as if they're for tax cuts for regular people. Now, when you go to the details of their plans, they're usually for tax cuts for the rich and not for regular people. But they make regular people think, oh, they want to cut my taxes. So when you mix that with the social issues stuff, where they're, Christians in the middle of the country who feel like they're not being represented, and then you have Republican politicians come along and talk about how we're against abortion because it's baby killing and we love the Bible. So they mix in social and cultural issues with this fake idea of populism where it's like, I want to give you tax cuts, regular guy. And then that's how they end up voting against their interests. Thoughts on the Unification Church? As an ex-Mooney, they make other evangelicals you cover look like Noam Chomsky. I don't know about the Unification Church. I know about the Dominionists, the Christian Dominionists, and they're pretty bad. Yeah, the Unification I've never heard of. Are there other reforms to our educational system that need to take place besides eliminating college debt? Was Bush's No Child Left Behind a step in the right or wrong direction? I don't remember the details of No Child Left Behind, to be honest. I used to know it. I don't know it now. I forgot what it was. But no, thing number one, of course, is to eliminate the college debt and do free college and treat college like it's high school. But I'm sure there are other reforms that need to be done. And you know who you should ask about this? Allison Hartson. I'm not an expert on educational policy, but Allison Hartson was a teacher, and she cares deeply about this. And also, the miserable liberal Steph Zamorano, Jimmy Dore's wife. Ask her. She's a teacher too, and she's an expert. Just got home from work, and I'm just tuning in now. What did you think about Ocasio-Cortez's interview on PBS? I didn't see it. I thought it was fine, but others freaked out about it. Even Pacman. Did I miss something? That's weird that David Pacman freaked out about it. I guess I'll take a look at it. I guess the thing that people... Is this the Israel-Palestine thing that people are mad about? Yeah. Listen, she advocated a two-state solution. I'm not mad at people who still support a two-state solution. I used to support a two-state solution. I now support one state with equal rights, but I think that people need to be understanding if they disagree with her on this, and help her and educate her and talk to her. She obviously is a good person, and she's fighting for the right issues, and on some issues she just might not be totally in the loop. What's your thoughts on term limits? Generally support them. But I kind of like the thing that we have in the US where like the president has term limits, but the Senate doesn't. So I don't know. I actually don't know my thoughts on term limits. I have mixed feelings. On the one hand, they prevent a worst case scenario where like a dictator can take over and just like rig elections and shit, because at a certain point you gotta fucking leave. But then on the other hand, they are literally undemocratic, because you could say, I want that person elected again. And then the system is like, no, well, we have limits, so they can't be elected again. So I don't know. I have mixed feelings. I think they avoid a worst case scenario of like a dictatorship takeover, but it is also undemocratic. I got to think about it more. I think I'm always going to be waffling on term limits. I love you. Thank you. I love you too. The left needs to take back the narrative around freedom from the right. It is their single biggest rhetorical strength. Yeah, I agree with you on that. I agree with you. I think that on social issues, the left needs to fully embrace libertarianism. And when I say that, I mean on social issues, we should be totally live and let live. You know, I support legalizing, taxing, and regulating drugs. I support legalizing physician-assisted suicide. I support, legalized and regulated abortion. I think on social issues, you get to make all the decisions for your body and for yourself. And I think that this isn't something that's emphasized at all by the left. And oftentimes there's this perception of the left as very authoritarian, because so much you get, college campus lefties deplatforming people or censoring people because they perceive them as bigoted or sexist or racist. And it just comes across as very childish and like they're not in favor of freedom, like freedom of speech. Would be cool if you diversified show more, deep dive segments into specific current historical issues, more guests outside the studio. Thoughts? Here's a little fact about me. I'm a creature of habit. Even though I'm viewed as this super lefty, I'm actually, I'm a creature of habit. I'm very conservative in my personal life. So I like having a schedule. I like having a routine, and I don't like deviating from that. So that's probably why you feel sometimes that the show gets repetitive, because it is repetitive. And oftentimes when I make arguments, I'm making the same fucking arguments over and over. And, but the thing is, man, it's not like the same issues that I care about on Monday change on Tuesday. It's not like, hey, man, we really need Medicare for all on Monday, but on Tuesday, fuck Medicare for all. No, we still need it, and we need it desperately. So that's why I'm so repetitive and why I say the same things. And it's just the nature of what I do. The things that change are the stories. Like, okay, here, the facts of a certain case change, but then I can, talk about the same overarching point. The U.S. military currently has single-payer healthcare called TRICARE, which works. Do you think this would be an effective talking point against single-payer conservatives? Love your show. Yeah, I mean, even just Medicare. People are like, oh, the government can't do anything right. You want them to do healthcare? What the fuck is wrong with you? We already have government healthcare. And by the way, it happens to be the most highly rated healthcare in the U.S. So people like Medicare way more than they like the private system. So, like, we win that debate 10 out of 10 times, which is why we need to make that point and why all Democrats need to get on board with it and need to hammer it home. I think we win that if we just fight. It's so easy to win the debate on Medicare for all. It's so easy. We already have 60% of people with us. I worked with knee replacements. It's considered effective, but the patients have real pain. Most of our designs are in-house. However, the nation supplied the education, so I would argue that. Oh, this is for the person from before, saying they work with knee replacements. Okay. Yeah, I don't know, but I'm not sure profit should be involved in that. Do you? Do you think profit should be involved in that? I don't think it should be. You want the people who make the knee replacement parts to like make profit? I don't see what, like, there are certain industries that should be nationalized that work best when they're nationalized. Healthcare is one of them. So I don't really worry much about the profits for, whatever, various medical instruments. It's not something that concerns me more than what really concerns me is the 45,000 people dying because they don't have access to healthcare. I find it funny how the far right in America clutches their holy books and their guns while saying God is great and don't realize how similar they are to the Taliban. It is funny how, like, hardcore Christian fundamentalists like to view themselves as like the antithesis of like fundamentalist Muslims. But in reality, like you're pointing out, if you sit them down at a kitchen table and they have to have a conversation, they're going to end up agreeing on a lot of shit. Like a fundamentalist Muslim and a hardcore evangelical Christian. They're going to sit there and they're going to be like, think they hate each other. And the next thing you know, they're all going to agree that women belong in the fucking kitchen and gays shouldn't be getting married and they should know their place. And they're in favor of like tradition in the household and probably hawkish foreign policy. And they do end up agreeing a lot. And it's always funny how the people who, like, there were all these Oklahoma was one and a bunch of others, these red states that were passing these anti-Sharia law, whatever they were, amendments, provisions, whatever the fuck they were in their respective states. And it's like, you're the hardcore Christians. So they go from passing these anti-Sharia provisions, and then immediately after that, they want like the Bible in science class. It's like, whoa, how do you not see that you're giant hypocrites? It's like they love secularism, but only if it's secularism versus Sharia law, like Muslim fundamentalism. But if you give them the choice of Christian Sharia or secularism, they pick Christian Sharia 10 out of 10 times. With term limits is the idea that a new flow of ideas that come with a refreshed and non-outdated not appealing to you. Wouldn't that make young voters more excited and likely to get involved? So here's the thing. I don't think that that's what actually happens. It's not like, oh, since we have term limits, like we have term limits now for the president. Are our presidents great? No, they're all shitty. So it's not like, oh, it guarantees new ideas, because it just doesn't. It doesn't guarantee new ideas. You get the same old bullshit either way. But to me, the thing that's appealing about term limits is that is something, certainly for at the presidential level, where you're guaranteeing that you don't have somebody who like hijacks it and can stay in there for their life, because they have to leave after 8 years in the US. We have 2 4-year terms, so they have to leave after 8 years. So it kind of is a protection against the worst case scenario. That's how I see it. And I like that. But then again, it is literally undemocratic. FDR, this pre-term limits, FDR kept getting reelected. Why? Because people fucking loved the job he was doing. So if you get term limits, you got to kick him out, and he doesn't get, 4 terms? One of the issues about this new strain of right-wing commentators that I feel is not very talked about is that they usually don't comment about solutions, but they attack the solution proposed by their opposition. Thoughts? Yeah, that's one of those things, man. It's really easy to pontificate and poke holes in what somebody else is saying. But what the fuck are you saying? What are you saying? And that's the trick. It's so easy. And I know, because I do it sometimes, but it's so easy to just shit on social justice warriors. Like, oh, look at these fucking dumbass college kids. Look at you. You don't know anything. You have fucking green hair, asshole. And it's so easy to look at them and point and laugh. And like I said, I do it sometimes. It's not like I'm holier than thou on this front. But what do you believe? What are you for? And you're right. With a lot of commentators, a lot of pundits, you don't get that. Or what they do, my favorite hashtag classical liberal idea, is you talk about ideas, but you don't actually ever say what ideas you're in favor of. Listen, I believe in the battle of ideas. Okay? I believe in the battle of ideas. And I think we should have a free and open exchange of ideas. Somebody put it really funny on Twitter. I forget who it was, but they said, I find those people insufferable because mostly what they do is they interrupt actual debates that people are having to insist that people should be having debates. That's so accurate. It's so accurate. We should be having conversations. That's what we should be. Okay, but what is your actual position on this issue? Whatever it may be. Taxes, abortion, foreign policy, Yemen, whatever. What is your position? I think that we should be having discussions about this. We need a battle of ideas. Right, but what idea are you actually advocating for? Do you not believe in the free exchange of ideas, bro? It's like, oh, just say something. Why are you fucking just making noises with your mouth without actually saying anything, you jackass? If you had to vote for a celebrity, who would it be? I don't know. What celebrity is for Medicare for all? Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea. Hey, Kyle, I love your videos. I am also supportive of nationalism, the right-wing type, and social democracy, economics. I like the alt-right and Bernie Sanders. What are your thoughts on this? Wrong. Yeah, so basically what you're describing is you like the idea of free college and a living wage and a strong middle class, but you don't want to have minorities in your country, which is kind of fucked up. That's fucked up. Yeah, I don't get that. I never understood the appeal of racist politics. I don't get it. I don't understand it. Even if I'm as kind to them as I can possibly be, which I don't want to be, but even if I am as kind to them as I could possibly be. So they point to like, oh, look at these studies. It shows that black people aren't as smart as white people. The IQs are lower on average. Ugh, terrible, unbelievable. Well, it's negligible. Even if you believe that stuff, it's negligible. And then if you really want to do it by IQ, then logically speaking, you would have to kick out all the dumb white people too. The white people with an IQ below a certain point. So that seems like a weird road to go down. You want to start nitpicking people's IQs. And then also, I see a giant contradiction in that worldview, which is they love to bring up the race and IQ point, the alt-right people, but they also hate Jews. And if you believe that IQ stuff, then Jews on average have the highest IQ along with Asians. So how can you be in the alt-right and hate Jews, but also acknowledge that they on average have a higher IQ? Because you hate black people and minorities because you say, oh, they have a lower IQ, but then you have a lower IQ than the average Jew. So how do you hate the Jew? So in your ethno-state, shouldn't you be kicking out? So by your own logic, if you have this ethno-state, wouldn't Asians be kicking you out because white people on average have lower IQs than Asians if you believe all that stuff? So Asians should kick you out, and then I guess Jews should kick Asians out, or Jews and Asians are in the same state together, but they kick out white people and black people. It's so stupid. It's just so stupid. It's so stupid. It's identity politics is what it is. Treat people as individuals. Treat people as individuals. So you don't make hard and fast rules like we're not going to have any minorities here because that makes it better. I always laugh my ass off at that. What's his name? Matthew Heimbach, that Nazi guy, neo-Nazi, white supremacist, whatever, white nationalist. He was at an event and he was being interviewed about his beliefs. And he was like, yeah, the problem with Trump is Trump is really pro-establishment, and Trump's doing the bidding of the military-industrial complex, and Trump's doing the bidding of Wall Street. And he rings off all these things that are true. And I'm sitting there, I'm going, right. But then his conclusion is, which is why we need to get all the minorities out of the country. Bro, what? you were just ranting again. Oh, Trump's a puppet of the establishment, and he's doing the bidding of the globalists, and he's doing what the military-industrial complex wants. Well, dude, if you're talking about how Trump is sold out to Wall Street, well, I got news for you. Wall Street's like 99% white. So obviously having a country, even if it's all white people, that doesn't protect it from corruption. That doesn't make it so the country is definitely going to thrive. It's like, how did you accurately diagnose the problem and then your solution is just fucking stupid? I don't get that. So don't be in the alt-right. To this guy thinking about joining the military, I'm in the military and it's worth it for its benefits. My job has zero to do with combat, so I don't feel I'm contributing to U.S. imperialism. Show keeps me sane. Yeah, I support that. Thank you, Tyler. And that's good advice. If you want to join the military and go do something not involving combat, by all means. David Pakman did a segment recently where he and Pat both advocated and said they were for mandatory service in the military for at least a year at a time, even if it's just the Peace Corps. Thoughts? No. Totally disagree with that. What is your solution to transition to a single-payer system without the loss of thousands of jobs for average American worker at these companies? P.S. I would love a shout-out to my channel. Dude, you should have spelled your channel more reasonably. The Primo Show. And it's spelled Premaux. The Primo Show. Okay, what's my solution to that? Well, here's the sad reality that other people won't tell you, but I'll be upfront with you. There's going to be a decent amount of job loss when you move to a Medicare for All system. And the reason for that is very simple. You have a lot of jobs that shouldn't exist in the first place. You have this giant bureaucracy in the middle, this unnecessary for-profit, price-gouging, rapacious middleman that rips you the fuck off as it denies you care. That's the private insurance companies. A lot of people work for them. So here's what's going to happen. A lot of those jobs are not going to exist anymore. Now, here's the only thing I could say that might be some solace in response to this. There will be a tremendous amount of job creation, but it will be in other industries. So there's going to be a lot of job creation when it comes to renewable technology, green technology, because we have to transition off of oil. We have to get off of the fossil fuels for the sake of the world because of climate change. And so that's the next economic boom waiting to happen, is this green technology revolution. So there's going to be a lot of job creation, but yes, there will be job loss when we transition to a healthcare system, which is how the healthcare system should be. If I give you a job cutting my grass, and then, the grass is already at a low level, I'm going to have to come out and say, dude, you can't cut my grass anymore. Like, I'm not going to pay you to cut my grass with those little scissors, the tiny ones. Imagine you're on your hands and knees cutting that grass. And I'm like, okay, I don't need you to do it anymore. I mean, those people, that guy will be upset, but the reality is, yeah, this job is done. The job of fucking price gouging in the middle, robbing people of their money as a health insurance company, that day's going to come to an end. Those jobs shouldn't exist anymore. How come you never made a video ripping Sargon for misrepresenting Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez? I talked about that a little bit in this stream. You could check out the whole thing and then you'll see. But I don't like beef. I'm not gonna, I disagree with him. I made that crystal clear in this stream. I've made it clear indirectly in other arguments I made on my show and other points I made in other segments. But yeah, I don't like YouTube beef where like we're rappers or some shit and I rant against him and then he rants against me and then we keep going back and forth. I can address the ideas and the points without, becoming a child. What do you think of Rationality Rules? He seems to like your channel. I'm not sure I know. I'm not sure I've seen it. Maybe I have come across a video or two, but I'm not sure. Few things infuriate me more than conservatives who deny that there was a North and South flip in any party affiliation, in party affiliation in the middle of the last century, and insist that the GOP is still Lincoln's party. Yeah, that's Dinesh D'Souza's entire career is based on denying the fact that there was a political realignment that happened in the 60s. So his whole career is a lie. That's literal, because that's his whole shtick. His whole shtick is denying the realignment in the 1960s. Hey, Kyle, have you read the Economist article on Democrats and how to win elections that came out last week in their July 14th issue? I haven't, but is that the one that was really shitty about how we need to be centrist? It might be that one. What do you think about self-driving vehicles? I think that they're probably going to be the future, and they probably are statistically safer. But having said that, I don't want that. I want to drive my own car because I like feeling like I'm in control. I'm a control freak. Even if I am technically less safe than an actual self-driving car, I like that feeling of driving a car. I don't trust the CIA word on Russia. After WMDs and reading the book Drugs as Weapons Against Us by John Potash, builds upon the work of Gary Webb. Yeah, I don't trust the CIA either. Listen, man, that's what annoys me. Like, I despise Donald Trump with a burning passion. I don't want anybody to get me wrong. I also despise the CIA with a burning passion. I also know that intelligence agencies in the U.S. are notorious liars. Their whole point is to lie. How many fucking governments have they overthrown? They just sold us a bullshit war in Iraq not even that long ago. And we're going to pretend now like How dare you question their conclusions, which is what people do. They act like, I can't believe you're questioning the conclusions of the intelligence agencies. Unbelievable. It's like, yeah, I'm questioning them because they're fucking proven liars. Trump is too, and I hate Trump too. But it's not an either or. You don't have to pick between the two and then stick with them. You can hate them both. I feel politicians on the left are not nuanced enough on the minimum wage issue. Australia has a tiered minimum wage where teens make less than adults. I've convinced Republicans with this argument. Thoughts? I don't know if I agree with the tiered minimum wage thing for like kids and then adults, but I do think that I did mention before what my ideal system is for the living wage. I like having a living wage and tying it either to each county or to each voting district. So in other words, you're going to have a different minimum wage in rural Wyoming than you will in New York City. Because in New York City, a living wage is probably over $20 an hour. In rural Wyoming, it might be $10.32. But technically, it's the same dollar value in both places. But it's harder to sell that. That doesn't have the same, ring to it as Fight for 15, So I support Fight for 15 because I support a living wage, and I think that's the best possible way to get it. But at the same time, my ideal system is that kind of a system, which is more nuanced and it is a little different than what's being advocated for right now. But yeah, I think with reason and logic, you can convince many people on a minimum wage. Because, by the way, already 80% of Americans want to raise the minimum wage. So it's one of those issues where they already agree with people on the left. Have you considered all payer as an alternative to single payer as a universal healthcare system, like is being done in Maryland? I have not, but I'm intrigued by that, and I'll take a look. All payer. Interesting. Have you ever thought about going on Bill Maher's show? He wouldn't have me on. I think it'll be a great opportunity to widen your audience and show your political stance. Bill Maher would not have me on. Bill Maher didn't even allow Cenk Uygur on. Now, Secular Talk has what? 500 and some odd thousand subscribers. Cenk Uygur and TYT have over 3 million. For the longest time, I think Cenk was trying to get on TYT. Wouldn't have him. He has a bias against internet people. Dude, he is seriously ancient. He is seriously ancient in his thinking. He has a bias against internet people. He thinks that we're bullshit. He thinks we didn't pay our stripes or earn our stripes and pay our dues. He thinks that, we're not real. Like we're not really known. We don't really have followings. We're not real political thinkers because we're just ranters on the internet. He has a serious bias against them because he's ancient. Look at some of the people he lets on his show. I mean, the most fucking out of touch, fucking old, ancient ass non-celebrities, and he thinks it's like awesome. Hi, Kyle. What advice would you give to Dems running campaigns in red states? How should they go about articulating their positions to constituents who may be hostile to progressive policies? Milton, that's a great question. And the answer is very simple. I believe that there are certain campaigns that are universal, where if you run on these policies, you can win pretty much anywhere. Economic populism sells everywhere. Economic populism even worked for Trump. Now, he lied. He was a fake populist, but they liked it. Even in the middle of the country, they liked it when he said, I'm not going to cut your Social Security. I'm not going to cut your Medicare. I'm not going to do the TPP. I'm going to keep your jobs in this country. Screw the elites. Screw the trade deals that ruined your lives and took away your money. So you have to run on Medicare for all, free college, a living wage, a New Deal. You have to run anti-establishment, anti-elitist, and this kind of stuff resonates everywhere. Now, that's how you do it in red states. That's how you do it in blue states also. The only difference is in blue states as well, you can focus on, legalizing marijuana, ending the drug war, doing criminal justice reform. That issue you can focus more on in blue states. But yes, even legalizing marijuana, that's something in red states that they like too. But that's more of a blue state issue where I'd put that more front and center in a blue state. But everywhere you run on Medicare for all, free college, living wage, ending the wars, New Deal. You can run on that anywhere and it'll win in every district in this country. That's for sure. Those are ideas that are already super popular. Why did Cortez misrepresent her poor upbringing? She didn't. That 45,000 people dying from lack of healthcare is wrong, so stop using it. No, it's not wrong, and I'm not going to stop using it. I'm citing a Harvard study. The low number is 38. Sometimes I say 45 just to keep it short. but the actual number is anywhere from 38,000 people a year to 45,000 people a year die every year from not having basic health care. That's a Harvard study that found that. Granted, the study's old. It's from like 2009, I think it was. But it's a Harvard study, and it's much more reliable than you, Mr. Random Internet Commenter. Now, as far as the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez thing, she didn't misrepresent it. In fact, she was on TYT Politics during the campaign talking about how half the time when she grew up in Yorktown, which is in upstate New York, and half the time she grew up in the Bronx and Queens or wherever it was in the city. And she was able to see how your zip code affects your upbringing. So she had the taste of living in a more poor area and living in a middle class area. And so she understood why your zip code was so important in your upbringing and why this is the reason why we need to have equal opportunity. So it's not true that she misrepresented it. You've bought into right-wing propaganda. And as far as a $15 minimum wage causing inflation, there's no evidence for that. There's no evidence that increasing the minimum wage would increase unemployment, and there's no evidence that it would cause inflation. What do you think about Bill Binney, former top NSA official, and VIP's analysis on Russian hacking in 2016? Really suggest you interview him and upload it to the Secular Talk channel. Bill Binney, I've seen his interview with Jimmy Dore, and I thought it was great. Everybody check that out. Bill Binney, Jimmy Dore. Type that into the YouTube search box. Thoughts on Linda Sarsour? I hear she's a mixed bag in the progressive realm. Yeah, I don't know enough about her, but I know people who know her. Like there's people who run in similar circles. Like she runs in similar circles that I run in. People on the right, it's easy to caricature her because people on the right point to stuff she said when she was younger about, like good aspects of Sharia law. And they use that to try to say like she still believes in Sharia law and she's like a super fundamentalist or whatever. My whole thing is she said some stupid things, and I think she would admit that. At the same time, she was for Bernie Sanders. So she's obviously secular because Bernie's deeply secular and she supported Bernie. And she seems to be big on, the same things I would care about: Medicare for all, living wage. So I'm sure that there's 1,000 things she said that I would find ridiculous, but I think that there is a little bit of a caricature of her that's created as if she's like this kind of comic book villain, Muslim fundamentalist, stealth, not jihadist. I don't think anybody would call her a stealth jihadist, stealth Islamist. Like, oh, she wants to implement like Sharia law stealth. And it's like, no, she doesn't. I think that's a straw man. And you could disagree with her while acknowledging that she supported Bernie Sanders and is generally on the left. Have you heard of someone called G-Man, the evangelical Christian who denied the existence of starving children? Would you consider debating him, and would you still go on DP despite TJ having left? I'm friends with TJ, so I feel like a loyalty to TJ. So if I do anything, it would be having a conversation with him. As far as debating G-Man, that's just fucking, you guys just want internet fodder where you could laugh, where I school some poor Christian and make the poor guy feel like he wants to kill himself. Thanks, Matt. Matt gave $10. What do you think about the claim that Hillary Clinton's no-fly zone would have started World War III? I mean, yeah, the whole point of having a no-fly zone is you shoot down any planes that fly in that zone. And also you have ground troops there too. A no-fly zone requires ground troops. But yeah, Russia was flying planes in the area because they're Assad's top ally. So if you have a no-fly zone and Russian planes fly in, are you going to shoot down a Russian plane? I mean, you shoot down a Russian plane, yeah, you're risking World War III. That's exactly what the fuck you're doing. So I love how people acted like, oh, it's hyperbolic. No, not really. It's not really that hyperbolic. That's what it is. But now at the same time, we have to acknowledge Trump is super shitty on the issue of Syria. Trump bombed the Syrian government. Trump bombed Syrian-aligned troops. Trump is now permanently occupying Syria. The U.S. military is permanently occupying Syria. So kind of almost everything we feared Hillary would do, Trump is doing. He's doing. And that's the thing is like, I am against Trump. I resist Trump, but my resistance of Trump is from the left. When you see a lot of Democrats resisting Trump nowadays, it's from the right. And they're like, oh man, you really got to show Putin who's boss here. That's what you got to do. It's like, wait, weren't you just saying Donald Trump is a lunatic and a maniac and he shouldn't be able to have his finger on the nuclear red button? And now all of a sudden you're fucking saying he should be more hawkish? Because that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. That seems to be a giant contradiction. I love politics, but I'm not knowledgeable enough to be accepted into a political science course. I want to be in politics and eventually become a politician. How do I get there? That's a tough one, dude. That's a tough one. If you want to be a politician, you know what's funny? I don't even know how one would go about becoming a politician. I mean, you need to find a campaign manager. There's a lot of shit you have to do. And you need people who are very knowledgeable with how the system works. But yeah, you said you're not knowledgeable enough to be accepted into a political science course. I don't believe that. And that probably is a good place to start, is to go take political science courses and learn more about it. That would be my advice. I have a political science degree, but I never bothered to ask, like, hey, if I want to run for office, exactly what should I do? So I would just say go take political science courses and then ask the teacher, like, hey, what would I do if I wanted to do X, Y, and Z? And they should know. Did you feel bad for Razor Fist after eating him for dinner and then crapping him out? I did, but then I saw, like, somewhat recently he was making some shitty point and thinking he was owning me. He was, like, angrily tweeting at me one day, like, see, I told you I was right. And I, like, looked at it for a split second and was like, pipe down, fuckface. You know you got owned. And you know that whatever you're saying right now is your sad attempt to try to, like, get vengeance for how thoroughly destroyed you were. For those of you who haven't seen it, type in Kyle Kulinski Razor Fist debate. Yeah, that was a bloodbath. That was a bloodbath. Will you please go on Deep Fat Fried, TJ Kirk's podcast? He doesn't even have guests on that podcast, man. At least I haven't seen any guests on that podcast, so I don't know why you would want me to go on it. It's not, like, that's not the format of that podcast. That's not what it is. They, like, pick a topic and they just go off on it, you know? So they don't have guests. Would you prefer a Danish labor market model, collective bargaining of wages, over a minimum wage by law? I want both. I want both. I want to have a minimum wage by law, but then I also want, like, just tremendous growth of unions where, you know, you guarantee that you have workers making way above the minimum wage. I mean, that's what happens when you have collective bargaining. You're going to get better wages. You're going to get better vacation time. You're going to get better healthcare. So I want both. I want strong minimum wage laws, and I want the rapid expansion of unions, and I would support policies that get us there. Harvard study is 10 years old, unreliable. Why? It's just because it's old, it's unreliable? I told you, the low number is 38,000. So, okay, if I say 38,000, I mean, there's still 38,000 people dying every year from not having health care. There have been plenty of studies saying it would increase unemployment, by the way. Crowder and Shapiro would crush you. Okay, but that's not true. I've seen countless studies that say the opposite, and the studies I'm referring to are empirical studies. See, that's the thing. You have, for libertarians, it's always theoretical. It's always like, well, if this happens, this should happen. That's the way their arguments are framed. It's like, well, if you raise the minimum wage, well, that means that the businesses need to pay their workers more, which means that they will, I mean, what logically follows from that is that they will fire people because they can't afford them. That's their argument. Well, it turns out when you actually crunch the numbers, if you implement a minimum wage increase in a reasonable way, which means, okay, you do a gradual increase over a few years. Well, what the evidence shows is that there is no negative effect on unemployment. In fact, there's been studies that found unemployment actually goes up. Unemployment goes down. Employment goes up. So if employment goes up, then it's just factually not true that a minimum wage increase hurts employment. Now, it is possible that it could happen, but you would have to raise the minimum wage too high or raise it way too quickly. So just don't do those things, and then you're going to be fine. And I love how I have random Steven Crowder and Ben Shapiro fans in here. Okay, first of all, I can kind of see Ben Shapiro being somewhat convincing to people. Like, I can kind of see it. Like, I've watched enough Shapiro where I'm like, okay, he's talking really fast and his points are semi-coherent. So I could kind of see it where somebody might watch it and then fall for it and then love it. I've never watched Steven Crowder and gone, yeah, he's obviously keeping it real. He always struck me like a kind of a sleazy salesman where he's working backwards from his conclusion. And by the way, he was a Ted Cruz supporter, which tells you pretty much everything you need to know about Steven Crowder. How do you reconcile your argument that party switched in the 1960s and your support for FDR, who was a Democrat in 1930s before the supposed switch? Because I'm not a partisan. It wouldn't matter to me if FDR was a Republican. His policies were wonderful. So it doesn't matter. The party affiliation to me is irrelevant. I would support a Republican tomorrow if they were in favor of the policies that I'm in favor of. And listen, there were downsides to FDR. Don't get me wrong. I mean, FDR, he did nothing to fight back against segregation. Totally let it be. Totally let it be. You know, Japanese internment is another thing. So yeah, it's not like he was flawless. It was just that on economic issues, he was pretty populist and he was a social democrat. So on the economic stuff, that's obviously where I agree with him. But yeah, rarely have we had a time in U.S. history where things were this partisan and solidified. So in other words, like Ronald Reagan, for example, when he won his re-election in 1984, was it? But whenever it was, he won every state but Minnesota. Every state but Minnesota. Can you imagine in today's day and age an election happening where a politician wins 49 out of 50 states? Not possible. Not possible. Because today, I think we are more partisan and more tribal than ever. In that Mississippi's red, and it's going to stay fucking red. Alabama's red, it's going to stay fucking red. Hawaii's blue, it's staying fucking blue. California's blue, it's staying fucking blue. So, like, back then, the party affiliation, I don't think there was as much that was entailed in it. Like, there were liberal Northeast Republicans, and there were conservative Southern Democrats. So it was more of a smorgasbord of a mix of things for the parties back then. You mentioned earlier that you were for worker-owned co-ops and against the death penalty. What other ideas do you hold that aren't so mainstream? That's a good question. Legalizing more than just marijuana. I don't think that that's a mainstream position. I think that most people would pump the brakes when they get to certain substances. I mean, I don't want to legalize every single drug. Because I think when you regulate, you're going to regulate away the worst drugs like crystal meth or crocodile. But yeah, there are going to be some that are legal that most people would probably go, I don't know about that, dog. I don't know about that. I'm trying to think of other things that I have a strong belief in, but might not be popular. I think most people are for physician-assisted suicide. It's only like 52 or 53% or something, but I think most people are for that. I don't know any others at the moment, but if I think of one, I'll mention it. FYI, the German government did and checked the legality of interventions into Syria, concluded that only Russia is acting in accordance with international law. Love your content, except for the Alex Jones stuff. Really? Why don't you love the Alex Jones stuff? I don't understand why you wouldn't love the Alex Jones stuff. I love the Alex Jones stuff. Last super chat. I just want to say it's a small world. I live in Poughkeepsie, but my mother is from Pelham and father's from New Rochelle and went to New Rochelle High School. That's awesome. Tell your dad I say what's up, man. He's from my hood. What do you think of QAnon? Also, how about social capitalist? And how about if instead of a minimum wage, mandate no company can pay one employee more than 50 times what you pay another combined with universal basic income? Those are some interesting ideas. I could maybe support those. I'd have to think about it more and think about the upsides and downsides. I don't like social capitalist. I don't like that term. Not sure why, but it just doesn't rub me the right way. But I do like your other ideas. I'd have to think through, though, if I would really prefer that over other solutions. Hey, Kyle, I love your show. You should check out the OPCW initial report on the Duma Syria chemical attack. Curious your thoughts. I think that's the one that said that there's no evidence it's Assad, right? Isn't that the one that said that? Hey, Kyle, don't know how often you eat McDonald's, but the McDonald's app has some good deals. The other day, I got a quarter pounder with cheese for $1. Damn, son, where do you live? Because quarter pounder with cheese is not $1 around these parts. It is not $1. I'm going to take a few more of these, and then I'm going to wrap it up, guys. So get your final questions in, skis. I'll be here for 5 more minutes. 10 max. Should we have the Senate? I don't see why rural voters should have a disproportionate amount of power. Caleb, good question. Here's your answer. No, we shouldn't have the Senate. You are correct. Can you do another thing with Sargon? He's trashing Cortez. No, it's not going to happen. He's going to support Trump no matter what who the Dems put up. He knows his crowd. To be fair to him, I don't think he's doing it because he's pandering to his crowd. I think he's doing it because this is what his opinions are now. I think he's genuinely pro-Trump, as he said in the podcast with Progressive Voice. And I think he shifted right. He might disagree with that latter part of that he shifted right, but I think he has. I think he shifted right, and I think it's relatively clear. And I spoke about him trashing Cortez earlier in this stream, and you could check that out. Please consider doing a live stream with the Non Sequitur Show. You have such a logical and principled stance on the issues. I think you would fit in very well. I'd love to see it. I love how I can't keep up with all these shows. I've never even heard of this. Non Sequitur Show. Okay. I'm typing some things in so I could check it out later. Oh, and by the way, the results are in. Social Democrat got 51%, populist left 25%, libertarian left 24%. So you guys like Social Democrat more than anything. Mississippi and Alabama have both elected Democrats statewide in the past couple of years. I'm talking about in the presidential election. Jim Hood and Doug Jones. And likewise with Vermont and Massachusetts with Republicans. Ideas on how this connects with 50-state strategy. First of all, I was talking about presidential election. There's no way that any presidential candidate for either party is going to get 49 out of 50 states. It's inconceivable. As far as a 50-state strategy, yeah, I support it as a matter of principle. I'm under no illusions. I don't think the Democrats are going to win Alabama or Mississippi, but I do think that the Democrats have a shot in some states that they've been written off in. I do think that we might not be able to win 49 out of 50 states, but God damn it, maybe we can win 40 out of 50 states. So I believe in a 50-state strategy as a matter of principle more than anything. I'm not in thinking we can actually win 50 states. Kyle, I'm upset you completely dismissed the idea of reparations. Yeah, I don't know how it would work. I don't know how it could possibly work and be fair. I just don't. Because I think any way you would do it would mean a subsidy from people who didn't do slavery. Because you're punishing people who didn't do slavery, but because they're ancestors of people who did do slavery. That just strikes me as it doesn't make very much sense to me. I think if you have a fair and equal system that provides people with equal opportunity, and a system that provides people with a fair shot and gives people the basics of life, then I think it should be a meritocracy once you reach that point. Dave Rubin is a shill for his Coke daddy's money. Would you be more interested in doing more segments critiquing him? I feel he's a very dangerous gateway pundit to a regressive ideology. I've done a few, but to be honest, I don't really watch his stuff. The only time I really watched a lot of his stuff was his podcast with Rogan, because I like Rogan. And there were some moments in that were just so ridiculous that I had to cover it. And so he got, I think, 2 segments out of that appearance, but I never would watch just his stuff. I've seen his like PragerU videos and they're always hilariously stupid. But I wouldn't just watch his show. When I used to watch it a little bit, I noticed he would throw softballs down the center of the plate to whoever he was talking to. And it always happened to be somebody who leaned right. So He just doesn't. He strikes me as kind of banal and boring and predictable, and yeah. So whenever I see stuff that's interesting, I'll cover it, but I won't probably see it much. Been watching you since day one. What do you think about Shri Thanedar for governor in Michigan? Michigan governor's race. Oh, no. That's the dude. No, you don't want to vote for him. He's fake. He's faking it. That's the fake progressive. Dude, that guy was a Republican. You want to vote for the other one. What's his name? Why am I blanking on his name? Abdul El Sayed. Yeah. That guy who you just mentioned, he did a thing. He did an ad where he said he's the furthest left candidate in the race. But he's not. He's just not. He's a corporatist. And Abdul El Sayed is the Bernie Sanders back candidate. Literally, he's our revolution. He's a Justice Democrat. So Abdul El Sayed, that's who you got to vote for if you're in Michigan. Or that's who I would vote for. I can't tell you who to vote for, but that's who I would vote for. I'm just telling you that guy Shri is faking the funk all day long. Would you vote for Jimmy Carter if you're in? He can't. He's already been president. Oh, but he was a one-termer. That's right. I don't know. I don't know if I would. I'd have to hear him out on all the different issues. I think he's a deeply good man. He's fucking out there curing diseases and shit while Bill Clinton's trying to make money. You know, all the ex-presidents are doing some fucked up shit. And then Jimmy Carter's out there curing diseases. So I know he's a good man, but I just don't know if I'd vote for him because I don't know. I'd have to hear what he believes on all the policies nowadays. Out of the people rumored to run in the 2020 Democratic primary, who do you think has the best chance at winning the most delegates and securing the nomination? Bernie. Bernie all day long. He's the favorite. Why do you think Jimmy Carter lost the 1980 election? Stagflation, my dude. Stagflation. The economy was pretty shitty because of oil. The situation with Iran was a big issue, and you had stagflation. Media is ignoring reports coming from Helsinki summit alliance between Trump, Putin, and Netanyahu against Iran. Real News Network talked about it yesterday. Thoughts? Next time I do a show, I will be covering this. Basically, Donald Trump acted as Benjamin Netanyahu's puppet. And unlike the claims against Putin, here we have real evidence. Yeah, WikiLeaks released this the other day. Netanyahu was bragging. Oh, Trump pulled out of the Iran deal just because we told him to. So he's your puppet. Funny, the media is not calling him that. Weird. But when it's Putin, all day long. You're effing gas, Kyle. Give me a shout out. I'm a new patron to your Patreon page too. Peace. Sean Murphy, good looks, brother. You gave 50 pounds, bro. God damn. Good looking out, brother. All right, guys. I got to bounce skis. I got to take a mean piss. Anyway, love you guys. Thanks so much for supporting the show. Thanks for all your super chats. Thanks for all your Patreon support. Patreon.com/secular talk. For those of you who don't know, if you could throw $2 a month or $5 a month or whatever makes you comfortable, whatever you can afford. And if you can't afford it, don't worry about it. It's all good, man. I love you guys either way, no matter what. But thanks so much for listening. I got one more. I'll do it for you guys. Adam Kern. Does progressivism work in the South the same as it does in the Midwest, in your opinion? I think it'd work better than corporatism, but still think we can't win there, at least not immediately. Adam, yes, we can win there. Populist left policies win everywhere. That's why Bernie crushed in those states. They're ready. They're ready for Medicare for all. They're ready for free college. They're ready for a living wage. They're ready for ending the wars. They're ready for a New Deal. They're ready for unionization. That's why the West Virginia teacher strike happened, because those are union people. Those are working families. That place is ready for a populist left takeover. So I do think it can work in the Midwest. In fact, I think it's going to be a lot easier to work in the Midwest than people think. I really do. All right, guys, I got to wrap it up here, so you could stop sending in the super chats. But thank you so much. It really means a lot. Thoughts on abolishing ICE? I see abolishing ICE idea would be a mistake because it'll lead back to INS, which gives more power to Attorney General Jeff Sessions. I've never heard of that theory before. But I support abolishing ICE because, number one, it was created in 2003 under George W. Bush. And number two, they're doing slavery. And number three, it's overkill. It's an unnecessary government program, and we already have Customs and Border Protection. I live in Cali. Every time they raise Monday and Wednesday, it's automatically raise rent and real e-price, which eliminates any raise. That's the solution for that. I don't know what you just said, Constantine, but thanks for the $5. And on that note, guys, I'll talk to you. I'll see you soon. Everybody enjoy your weekend. Peace.